Talk shoes.
Recorded live.
Welcome, everyone, to the premiere broadcast of Range Guide Radio. This is going to be the first of hopefully several more exciting new episodes with Range Guide Radio. First, I'd like to thank my family, my friends, and all the great members of Range Guide Network for making this possible, and TalkShoe for making this medium of exchange possible for us all. If you have any questions, anytime, you can always refer to rangeguide.net, our website. If you have any questions about the guests or anything that we're talking about. And at this time, we're going to turn it over to Dan Nelson, our guest. Welcome, Dan.
Well, thank you very much, and it's good to be here this evening with everybody. And I'd like to start by saying my association with Elder goes back about 5 to 5.5 years, and he became acquainted with my engineering attempts to make water more hydrating, and I know that based on what he's told me, it made a huge difference in his health, and of course that's based on his assessment of what was happening to his own biological system. So I was happy to be of assistance in that way to him, and I understand that I've been of assistance to many hundreds of people all over the nation. Many years ago, I ran into something that I thought was very peculiar and curious, and that was the fact that people who were drinking untold amounts of water, far more water than I've ever attempted to drink in my life, and I'm talking about 2 to 3 gallons of water a day, those individuals were just as dehydrated as people who drank very little water. And I thought that was odd. I don't know about the rest of you, but I was raised with my medical doctor, my health care provider telling me it's important to drink 8 glasses of water a day minimum, and if you can drink more, 10, 12, 14, do it. Well, you must ask yourself, based on what was the benchmark there? What kind of empirical evidence did they have for the amount of water that we should drink on an average? And the answer to that question is they had none. They simply realized the importance of water because we are a biological entity based primarily on water, anywhere between 60 and 80% water, depending on your age. And, of course, the brain is somewhere close to 90% water. In fact, all of biology is based on water. To our knowledge, biology does not exist apart from water. We've got very expensive rovers on Mars now looking for the evidence for life. They don't expect to find life, but they expect to find water, and the assumption is that if we find evidence that there was once a great amount of surface water on the distant 4th planet, the Martian planet, then there could possibly have been life at one point in time. So our water, of course, there's a mind-boggling abundance of life, and that's because of water. I don't believe it's entirely because of water, but that's one of the major reasons for such an abundance of life on this planet. And so I had to figure out why people drinking a lot of water were just as dehydrated as people that weren't drinking very much water at all. And my findings were very interesting. And the findings came subsequent to the development of a very special laser close to 14 years ago. In my work, I work in the branch of physics we refer to as theoretical physics, or we sometimes talk about quantum mechanics and quantum theory, and that's the playground in which I, as a grown-up child, operate, and I like to throw that sand around and hang on that set of monkey bars and go down that slide. And it's not exactly an easy slide to get down because I have to work with some devilishly difficult, we call it hairball mathematics, and some very, very bizarre concepts. And a lot of the ideas, of course, are counterintuitive. They're, to the average person, quite illogical. And the only way those ideas make any sense is via mathematics. So I was building a laser, and it was important that the particle wave go backwards in time. And the only way you can do that is, first of all, make the assumption that every particle of mass has an antimatter particle equivalent. For example, when Mr. Paul Dirac went out looking for the positively charged version of an electron, which they subsequently found and called the positron, he was looking for also a time-reversed version of the electron. He was looking for the antimatter particle version of the electron, and he found it. Such a thing seems to exist for all particles. And the particle that we believe carries the electromagnetic force, the photon, has an antimatter particle version. And I had to figure out how to harness and put to work the antiphoton. And I believe I succeeded in that. My laser sends a particle wave backwards in time. And when you're working with time-reversed energy, you're also working with an interesting set of principles, and a concept that a brilliant Dutch chemist named Ilya Prigogine was working with way back in the 1960s, early 70s. Eventually it won him a Nobel Prize in the mid-70s, where he essentially was talking in terms of biological systems, putting to work negative entropy running backwards. In fact, this is entirely necessary for biological systems to be able to defeat the second law of thermodynamics and have any possibility of propagating after their kind on this planet and leaving a future generation behind as a legacy. So we have to be able to deal with being steamrollered over, as it were, by the second law of thermodynamics. That's what basically death is. It's the second law of thermodynamics having its way with us and kicking us around the block. So I developed this laser, and I developed it for other reasons that are beyond the scope of this discussion. But I subsequently discovered when I became curious about the dehydration factor in people, that I could use this laser to engineer water. And so I proceeded to do that, and here's what came out of it. Let's take any given volume of water. It doesn't matter where it comes from. It could come from underground, from some aquifer, through a pumping system, through a well that's been drilled to some depth, or it could come out of an artesian well, an artesian spring. It could be surface water from a lake, river, stream, makes no difference. What you'll find is that all these different sources of water occupy what we call a certain thermodynamic status. And the matter of hydration is really tied in nicely with the science of thermodynamics. And we won't go real deeply into that. We'll just touch on it on the surface of it, but for our purposes, what we have to understand is that my discovery was that water, and there's a lot of physicists out there still making the assumption that water is a bunch of free, independent, unattached water molecules bumping into one another, just like the molecules and the atoms that comprise our atmosphere. And that's absolutely not true. If water was made up of free, independent water molecules, it would be no different than the mixture of atmospheric particles. It would be very much like the atmosphere, and you definitely would not want to dive from a 10-meter platform into a pool of air, okay? And if this water was made up of independent, free, unattached water molecules, you wouldn't want to dive into it either because you'd break your neck on the bottom. The reason why water has attributes and properties and characteristics that are so different than the mixture of atmospheric gases is because water molecules will not stay to themselves. They are very gregarious. The water molecule is like a tiny magnet. It's an entity that we say has a permanent dipole moment. And the oxygen side is holding all of the electron cards. Let's think of it as a card game, a poker game, okay? And here's the oxygen holding all the electron cards, and it ends up with the dominant negative charge. And hanging off the other side are a couple of hydrogen nuclei, which are essentially protons, unless it's deuterium. It would be a proton and neutron. But in this case, normal water is just mostly made up of normal water molecules. There's a little bit of deuterium in it, not much. But we have two protons hanging down there. They have a positive charge, so that side of the molecular entity has a predominant positive charge. Okay, now you've got something analogous to a little magnet. And water is very interesting because it has this unavoidable tendency to latch on to its partners in close proximity to it. And what it will do is it will form three-dimensional stable structures. See, nature abhors a couple of things. She does not like asymmetry, and she does not like instability. Things that are asymmetrical tend to not have stability, and they tend to come apart in time. So they have this property of self-disassembly. So water molecules will come together with their neighbors, and they'll form these three-dimensional symmetrical structures that we call polyhedra. Now, most of the water on this planet and under the surface of the planet is what I would call de-energized or thermodynamically degraded. So those water particles, the bonding angle between the two hydrogen and the oxygen is such that they form particles that are quite large. And they are much, much too big to get through the little aquaporin channel, which is an active protein channel on the membrane wall of a cell. And the discovery of the aquaporin channel involved the winning of a Nobel Prize, and it's a little kind of a funnel-shaped active protein channel, and that's how water gets into the cell. And the cytoplasm environment inside of the cell is a watery environment. And there's a need for an exchange between that inner environment and water outside of that environment. So it's important that water be able to get through the membrane wall of the cell, obviously, because the cell provides for that simply through the existence of the aquaporin channel. It's obviously there for a purpose, is what I'm saying. No matter how you look at the origin of life, whether it came here accidentally through some evolutionary process or by means of creation, direct intelligent design. Either way, there's a reason why there's an aquaporin channel on this membrane wall of the cell. So we've got to get water in there, and the water particles you're drinking are far, far too big to get through that aquaporin channel. In fact, my research shows me that about 95 to 98% of all the water particles that comprise the subsurface and the surface water on this planet are far too big to get through the membrane wall. The rest are what we call nanometer in size. That's a billionth of a meter across. And that's about the maximum allowable size for an entity to go through the aquaporin channel. Those particles have to be around a nanometer in size. So I discovered by being able to manipulate the thermodynamics of water and take water from where we would consider it, if not in a state of thermodynamic equilibrium, at least very close to it, to a state of thermodynamic disequilibrium. Therefore, I'm taking water. Your tap water is an example. When you pour a glass of that, that's water that's in its most probable state, near a point of thermodynamic equilibrium. And I'm going to take water and do something interesting. I'm going to put it in its least probable state. And that's what we refer to as a high molecular spin state. And I'm going to be able to keep it there indefinitely as long as the water is stored in an appropriately hard container and it's not exposed directly to microwave radiation. Otherwise, if you respect a limited number of rules and regulations here, you're going to be able to keep that water in a state of thermodynamic disequilibrium for a very, very, very long time, indefinitely, as a matter of fact. So now we've got water particles that are less than 1/2 of a nanometer. We've got water particles that are right down there, nominally in the area of 0.4 nanometers, plus or minus. Now, my water is actually composed of 3 different particles. By pumping this negative energy in, we're actually affecting the proton. And we're charging the protons in the nuclei of the atoms from which the water molecule is composed. And when I charge the 2 protons, the 2 hydrogen protons in each water molecule, I'll increase the strength of the little positive charge electrostatic field around those protons. They'll push against one another. You know, the old principle that like charges repel and unlike charges attract. Well, those protons, the 2 hydrogen protons hanging down there at a certain angle, nominally about 109 degrees in most water bodies, they'll increase their bonding angle out to a maximum of about 122 degrees. Beyond 122 degrees now, we can make the water molecule very unstable. We don't want to do that, so we're going to stop at 122 degrees. And as soon as that happens, as soon as the bonding angle changes, something fascinating happens. The water particles come apart. They disassemble, and they reassemble very, very quickly as a different geometry and a different size, a different scale. And they'll come down there to less than 0.5 nanometer in size. Now that's getting down to molecular in size, atomic in size. And that makes this water not only very efficient at hydrating, I refer to it as hyperhydrating. Now here's what happened. Last summer, some very curious people, in this case curious about this water, they got together in a laboratory in a college, and under the auspices of the PhD professor of microbiology, they decided to test the water. And there was a couple that came all the way from Singapore for this test. There was another couple that came from Fort Lauderdale. There were several graduate students there. This is on a Saturday. Everybody's volunteering their time. And then there was a physicist, and the physicist was the catalyst for the whole study. And his girlfriend, who's a brilliant German chemist. And so what they did was, since we don't have the ability to photograph a water particle, much less a water molecule, they decided to look at indirect evidence. So the indirect evidence is just as convincing. They asked my opinion, called me early that morning and said, being two time zones ahead of me, I'm in the mountain time zone and they were in the eastern. They said, well, what would you do to test this water? And I'd say I would use a membrane with a known size. Let's say we have a membrane that only allows nanometer particle size through. Well, they said that's easy to do. We can use cells. We'll do what we call standard absorption tests. So they take these plant cells and they pre-dehydrate them, and they have a way of doing this with salt. They make them very thirsty. And they put the plant cells on a microscope slide. And then in order to see where the water goes, you have to put a stain or a dye in the water. Otherwise, you can't see where it's going. So you add the stain or the dye, and then you go ahead and add that water with the stain or dye mixed with it to the slide and see what happens. Well, they were telling me that they were testing my water against 3 other very purified waters. I believe one was distilled, one was reverse osmosis, and I'm not quite sure how the third sample was distilled, but they added those to slides, and they were waiting and waiting, and finally the physicist said, "What are we waiting for?" And the professor of microbiology says, "Oh, nothing." He says, "Nothing ever happens in a standard absorption test." He says, "It's just something we require all the students to do. It's like a waste of time." He says, "It'll take hours for those cells to show any signs of hydration. Sometimes it takes days." Well, he says, "We don't have that amount of time. We're here to test Dan's water, so let's do that." So they added my water to a slide, and they watched, and he said the professor of microbiology got kind of a peculiar look on his face, and he lurched forward, and he hit the timer and turned it off, and he said, "Did you see that?" He said, "That water started through the membrane wall in 10 seconds, and as far as I can tell, it's totally hydrated the cell in 30 seconds. He says, "This is bizarre." He says, well, the physicist said he said, "You know, that the guy used 2 words you never hear come out of the mouth of a legitimate scientist." He says, "The words were astounding and amazing." He said, "That's what we're looking at. What I'm seeing is astounding and amazing. I believe it's something that nobody in history has ever seen water do."
Was this the test that was done in, I think maybe in Florida last year, Dan?
Yeah, it was in Florida last July. So now we've got a water that is what I call hyperhydrating. Now that's important because people working with a device developed by a former NASA engineer named Bill Nelson, it's called the QXCI machine. The modern version, the SCIO SCIO machine, I guess that's the same thing with expanded, updated software capabilities. And I was working with some folks last March here down in Branson, Missouri, and they're analyzing many different people with that device. It's $18,500 each one, and I don't agree that it does everything right, and there are other people around the country who will back me up on this. But there are some things it does very well, and one of the things it does well is measure intracellular hydration within the cells.
And that's the QXCI?
Yeah, the updated version, the SCIO.
Okay, the SCIO. Okay, one of our listeners, Paul, has one of those devices. Yeah,
and they are telling me that people not on the water, for the most part, are measuring 40 to 50%, which is pretty severe dehydration. Some people are significantly lower. They'll find people, believe it or not, in the 20s, which is critical dehydration. And now and then, somebody not drinking my water will be up between 50 and 60%. But they said all the people on your water are measuring in the 80s and 90s, and some very close to 100%. That's the difference. So it wasn't long ago that I got a phone call from a naturopathic doctor who works directly with Bill Nelson, and they were talking about somehow incorporating data on my water into the scale and using my water as as far as they were concerned, the world's reference for hydration. Now, I've tested a lot of waters. A lot of waters have been sent to me with claims that they have a lot of energy and they're very hydrating. And I've never found a water, well, I'm going to be honest with you now. The best water that's ever been sent to me was engineered by an individual named Lee Lorenzen. And it was an amazing 64% nanometer size. And the rest of that water was composed of the large particles. All the rest, 64%, were nanometer size. But there were no particles in the sub-nanometer range. So it tended to be, relatively decent hydrating water, much better than all of the other waters I was sent. And I'm very curious about what people are doing with water and what it turns out to represent in the long run is I end up to be very curious about what they think they're doing to water. And most people, I'm afraid it's kind of imaginary stuff. They're not really altering the state of water much.
You got to see some research data, I think, last year, Dan, with some comparisons with waters, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. And in fact, last July there was some testing done which tested my water against 19 other supposed high-tech waters. And the individual who did that testing said that there was no comparison, except he did notice one peculiar thing: adding a tiny bit of my water to all the other water samples improved their characteristics and capabilities. So what I've got here is a water where I can take a bottle of this water and detect an energy field, and the energy field drops off to non-detectable at a distance of 990 feet. 10 feet short of 1,000 feet from a bottle of water, and that's a lot of energy to put in water. And what you're actually detecting is the water will have the capability of bending or distorting or cohering space-time. It'll actually bend space-time. It actually becomes, as it were, a pretty serious competitor in terms of gravity field. And it has a lot of other interesting properties. We can actually, if you get into cellular biology, if you were to get the same, education as, say, a biochemist, what you would learn in your education is that a cell does not want to take a solid particle inside of itself. It would rather not deal with minerals in a solid state because that just represents more debris. And the vast majority of minerals that we're getting into our bodies are not small enough to go through the receptor sites anyway. So the majority of receptor sites on a cell wall are not meant to pass something inside the cell through the membrane wall and then something out of the cytoplasm environment, but they're simply stimulation devices is what they are. And the cell simply wants to be exposed to the energy of the mineral, that is, to its frequency analog. So I found that by getting water into this subnano state, it becomes extremely sensitive to picking up certain types of energy. And it depends on the amplitude of the energy wave, but you'll find that, let's just pick on an element like gold, for instance. If I were to take somebody's gold ring off their finger and put it in water, I could leave it there for the next 1 billion years, and that gold ring would never leave any energy behind in that water. No detectable energy would come from that gold ring. And the reason why is because it's a stable isotope, and as a stable isotope, it has a very, very low amplitude of wave. But the more unstable the isotope, the higher the amplitude of wave. So at a certain amplitude range, water will begin to pick up that energy and hold on to it, just kind of like something that has the ability to copy. It's like somewhat like making a recording of a human voice. If the voice is too low, you don't hear anything. So it's got to be adequately loud. And water has the ability to memorize, as it were. I figured out how it does that, by the way. And you can get water to hold the energy, that is the frequency analog of all of the minerals your body needs, that is all of the elements from the periodic table. And you'll find that what the cells want is the energy of certain unstable isotopes. So given the fact that, let's say in the case of iron, there's somewhere close to 20 isotopes of iron, there's only one isotope of iron that the human body really is capable of using. It's an unstable isotope. It's isotope 57. And if you go get a mineral supplement, you're going to find that the supplement has isotope 56, 54, sometimes 52. Those are stable isotopes. Those are great if you want to build the frame for your automobile, but they're not going to do you much good if you want to provide nutritional iron to the body. So I was part of a project where we were able to determine the correct isotope of all the minerals the body needs and actually put the energy or the frequency analog of those isotopes in water and develop what we believe is the ultimate nutritional mineral supplement. But your body does have a need for minerals in a solid state. However, it doesn't use those nutritionally. What it's doing is using the electrical charge or the valence of those minerals. That's how enzymes are activated in the body, by having minerals with the correct valence charge. And the correct valence charge is -2. All the minerals you should take into your body should have a charge of -2. And that way your body can just readily put them to work to activate enzymes and be involved in some other metabolic functions. But nutritionally, the cell just wants to be exposed to the energy of a mineral. So we've been able to do that to this water. And funny thing is, here's a water with, you can do this to distilled water. I don't recommend, for the most part, using distilled water because in order to benefit you, the water still has to have some ions in suspension. It has to be able to pass an electrical current to do your body any good. So if people put the energy of this into distilled water, then I recommend putting some ionized mineral back into it in the form of, say, a Himalayan salt or something of that nature, maybe even a little bit of Bragg's apple cider vinegar also works well, but we need to, if we're going to utilize water, it has to be able to pass an electrical charge, at least 12 millisiemens of current going through it. So we have a water here which is capable of mineralizing you, and people will notice a difference in how quickly their hair grows, the quality of their hair. They'll notice a difference in their fingernails and toenails. They'll often become thinner. They'll become flexible and stronger. They'll tend to grow faster. And a lot of the wrinkling and other problems tend to come out. So very interesting that you can do that with pure energy. Of course, there's been a lot of energies put in the water over the last 6 years of this project. This would take literally hours to go into, and I won't. It's beyond the scope of this discussion. But I have roughly 142 million frequencies in this water. All of these energies pertinent to biology. And there's a real interesting story behind this. And it was it took, I can't even begin to express the amount of time I've got in the development of this water. Basically 6 years of research and development tied up in this water. So, and it continues to improve. There's a new version of the water I don't think Elder even has yet that's now available. And
it's on the way.
Oh, it's on the way.
I'm looking
Good.
forward
Good.
to it. Yes.
Good. Yeah. That took the energy field out, Elder, from 860 to 990 feet. And theoretically, we can get water out there with an energy field detectable at 1,500 feet.
One of our listeners, Dan, has asked me to ask you, well, I already know that this is very difficult for lay persons, even for physicists, but they're curious to know if there's any modalities that they may be able to employ or tools that there might be available that can check the capabilities of the water.
Well, yeah, there's it gets really technical if you get down to the brass tacks. Water is I believe, until I find another one, water is the only medium that is entirely electrically inert, internally electrically inert. And that's because what holds the water molecules together in these geometric configurations is the electric field. And the electric field is completely engaged in the construction of the particle, leaving water itself electrically inert, which makes it capable of holding goodness. I don't know how much information, just incredible amounts of information. But what happens is that you can have water hold energy as pure potential, and we would call this scalar energy. And it'll hold, maybe perhaps an infinite amount of scalar potential.
Well, we know Dr. Emoto has done some exciting work in the field of, taking photographs of frozen particles of water, and it reveals some stunning details that indicate that there's definitely some changes going on with these morphic etheric energy fields and the influence of energies or fractal patterns, thoughts, words, encoded information, geometry, fractals, whatever they may be, into the water.
Yeah, and in reality, now if you take an entity that you photographed, say a crystal, about the size of a period on a page, in reality, it would contain about 1 million water molecules. Let's assume, for the sake of discussion, that all those molecules made up tetrahedral structures, so you'd have roughly 250,000 particles in there. And so what Dr. Emoto is showing you are fractal patterns made up of tens of thousands of water particles. And what he's demonstrating is it's a principle. It goes way back to Dr. Edward Lorenz at MIT, the first one who was actually doing computer modeling of weather systems. And he accidentally discovered, by letting a program run while they went to lunch, and I believe what happened was that when they entered the data, they omitted some figures. They cut them short. And when he came back, the results were astoundingly different than what they anticipated. So now they were able to conclude that there are certain systems that are incredibly sensitive to initial energy conditions. And that's what Dr. Emoto's work is showing you, that water is unbelievably sensitive to initial energy conditions. Even the energy of consciousness can change the structure of that water. That's how sensitive it is. So water's ability to the energy is actually held in the space in between the particles. That's what's holding the energy in the water. And when you get water particles small enough, if I could shrink you down and put you inside that water, what you would find would blow your mind. Now in this liquid phase, the water particles are now moving in anything but random fashion or random patterns. They're beginning to fractalate. That is, they're beginning to move in fractal patterns. And the more sophisticated the fractal patterns, the more energy the water is capable of holding on to and carrying. So normally water has a tendency, it wants to move in a vortex configuration. The particles actually move around one another like little ball bearings, and then they're held together and they're not allowed to wander too far apart by appropriate atomic molecular forces. And that's why water has the amazing properties and characteristics it does, is because it's like diving into a pool of little tiny ball bearings, and they're held together, but they'll split apart. They'll allow you to move through them, and yet provide an appropriate amount of braking action, or what we'll call friction. And this matter of the internal structure of water, its movement, and the fact that we can kill water easily. One of the things that kills the energy of water very rapidly is putting it through what we call laminar flow, that is forcing it through piping systems, which we restrict its natural tendency to move in a vortex configuration. So that gets us back to my initial, statement about this entire project being a study in thermodynamics. It's all about the study of the thermodynamics of water. And how do I manipulate the energy of a bulk property of water, and by manipulating the energy level, what happens to the water? Well, we see a subsequent change in particle geometry and particle size. Now, you can lower the surface of tension of water. You can lower what we call the interfacial tension of water, and you can do that, say, with a surfactant. That's what your dish soap does. But that doesn't make water more hydrating. Just lowering the surface tension of water doesn't give it the ability to hydrate, because you still have the matter of how big a particle will actually pass through the aquaporin channel. So you have to be able to, engineer the particle size of water to get water more hydrating, and that's what I've accomplished. And it's been verified in a number of indirect ways. I've had discussions with my old alma mater since I graduated. They picked up what we call an atomic force microscope, where they can actually photograph a molecule or an atom. But, in order to do that, it has to be done under very stringent vacuum conditions. You don't want to photograph the particles of air in between, the imaging train and the subject, so they can only photograph solids. And if you put water in vacuum conditions, it's not going to sit there and smile for a photograph. It's going to be gone. It's going to move. So at this point in time, we don't have the ability to photograph water molecules and even water particles. But we're working on imaging them through direct means, and this is by using a very powerful microscope, a microscope which has dark field capabilities, but instead of using the dark field capabilities, we'll use the white light capabilities, and we're using filtering. And we're finding by using infrared at the eyepiece end and different colors at the objective end, for instance, photographing, say, a nerve cell, okay? You would think, well, we have this elongated cell, but when you shine the right light on it, so to speak, you'll see something that will absolutely blow your mind. The nerve cell is made of a series of cubes. You can't see the cubes until you use the right filtering. But when you use the right filtering, you'll see, my goodness, it's made up of a series of cubes. In fact, everything in this universe basically is based on some type of geometrization of energy, and the particles are basically following the geometric energy patterns is what they're doing. So we're having a lot of fun with this.
This is kind of a good point to segue into some of the new technology that you're doing, Dan, with the biodisc.
Yeah. while you can't overemphasize the need for hydration, you can't really significantly get much done in terms of your health and wellness until you get hydrated. It's been my discovery over the years that there's basically there's an energetic cause for all human malady. It all starts at an energetic level. If you discount hydration, you'll find that just about everything that goes wrong with our biological system begins in an energetic state. And the vast majority of these energetic states, and this was really difficult for me to accept at first, but I was eventually forced to conclude that about 98% of everything that goes wrong with this begins with negative emotional states. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that our capacity to experience a vast array of emotions can be our own worst enemy. And I'm of the mindset or opinion that more than the need to add things to the body in terms of nutrient, there's an even greater need to take things away. That is to find a way of eliminating, removing, breaking down, nullifying, neutralizing negative energy fields. And they'll exist in us at many, many different scales. Some will attach themselves to particular organs. If you think about proteins, there's over 30,000 protein types that make up our organism. A protein is it's a structure made of amino acids. Amino acids are nothing but crystals. Therefore, the proteins are crystals. Crystals have a way of having the ability to hold on to resonant energy. And so different protein types will have a tendency to hold on very efficiently to various emotional energies because they all have their own frequencies. And the central nervous system, because of its intimate connection to the skin, we've got the peripheral nervous system, and there isn't any organ in the body with more nerve endings than your skin. The skin's the most amazing organism as far as I'm concerned. And you can take negative energies that come off the central nervous system, and the skin is like a big drum. It doesn't take much of a tap on a large drum, the head of a large drum, to load a lot of acoustical energy into the atmosphere around you. And that's just kind of a rough analogy to what's going on, because your skin is actually loading negative energies that come there via the central and peripheral nervous system into your energy field, okay? And when you're involved in like quantum mechanics the way I am, we deal a lot with waves, different types of waves, transverse waves, longitudinal waves, spherical waves, and energy. Well, I like to use, when I go out and teach, the principle of holography. If you know anything about making a hologram where you can retrieve a three-dimensional image, if you take a piece of film with a holographic image imprinted on it or encoded onto it, and you were to greatly magnify it, all you would see would be interference patterns. And all optical phenomena are nothing but a manifestation of the interpretation of interference patterns. So when waves get involved with waves, there's an interesting phenomenon we call constructive interference and destructive interference. So we have reinforcement when waves fall on top of one another, and we can have cancellation. So these lead to very interesting patterns. We call them interference patterns. And now, instead of just a two-dimensional surface like a piece of film on which you've made this holographic image, imagine that happening in 3 dimensions. Well, these energies that get loaded into your energy field are literally structures. They're waveform structures. They're geometries. They're very fascinating patterns. and they'll stay in your energy field indefinitely until you find a way of breaking those patterns down and eliminating them.
Dr. Bartlett does a lot of interesting research in this too, Dan. He works with these energies in the etheric or morphic energy field in and around the body, and he describes these as filters, these points of resistance that you're talking about.
And if you think about it, inside of the cells, a cell is an incredibly complex entity. Inside the cell, there's many different molecular-sized machines, and they're performing these precise functions over and over again, very quickly with a high degree of precision. And it begs the question, how does a molecular-sized machine know what to do? Well, it doesn't. It doesn't have a brain, doesn't have an intelligence. It's responding to a program. And the program is in your holographic energy field. I refer to the composite of all the different major fields that make you and I up as the hyperfield, because they all exist in different hyperdimensions. So I've coined the term hyperfield. And in your hyperfield, there is, as it were, it's a template of you. It basically told everything how to structure you and construct you and build you, but also there's program information that guides the operation of everything inside the cell on a moment-by-moment basis, so it's an operational field. And my finding is that I could develop some solid-state technology to help deal very effectively with things that find their way from the outside into your energy field, which interfere with its normal operation and obscure the information that the cells are looking for. There's an interesting man named Raymond Francis. I've met him. He's in the Bay Area, and he's got a radio talk show there, and he's written a fascinating book. And in the book, he makes the contention that there, in reality, is only one disease, and that disease is cellular malfunction. And I agree with the man. There is only one disease, cellular malfunction. No human being, no modality, no nutrient ever cured anything. There is no such thing as a cure. That's an absolute fallacy. The only thing you can do is help restore the normal function of the cell. That's all we can ever possibly do. And it might mean giving something to the organism that it lacks, and more than likely it means taking something away from the organism that doesn't belong there in the first place, which interferes with the normal function of the cell. So all we're doing is helping the body achieve a state of what we call equilibrium or homeostasis, or what I call cellular functionality. That's all we can ever hope to do, is make it possible for those cells to do exactly what they know to do, so to speak. And you notice that I purposely avoided using the term designed to do, because maybe some people, well, let's assume it either designed by a superior intelligence or designed by some natural process in the universe. Either way, we'll say that the word design suffices for our discussion here. So the cell has a certain function in the body, is part of a colony that's responsible for a certain very important function that's part of a much, much larger a picture, and hopefully everything is coordinated so all of these different colonies of cells work well together, and overall you experience a high state of health and wellness. But that's very seldom the case, because there's some really complex things going on inside of us. Even negative thinking can take you down. Now, I had a group of people in my house today, and I told them a true story, and I'll tell it to you. You'll think of this as really bizarre, but it's absolutely true and accurate. I'm going to just convey this story to you as accurately as I possibly can. This is about 5 years ago. I got a call from a woman, and she said she had a husband with a problem, and they couldn't find a solution. And they lived on the east side of my city, and I'd never met these folks, and I've lived here my whole life. So they came by. I said, come by at 10 o'clock. So they came in the door at 10 o'clock, and she said to her husband, well, go ahead and show him your ankle. So he pulled up his Levi's and pulled down his crew socks, and he had the ugliest black, blue, purple swollen ankle I've ever seen. And I looked at him and said, boy, that's a doozy of a sprain. And she said, no, that's a spider bite. He said, yeah, I got it last summer. And he'd been dealing with this thing for about 3 months. And she said, they gave him the wrong anti-venom serum in the hospital, almost killed him. And it didn't do anything to alleviate this problem. They said, is there anything you can do? And I said, well, no, there isn't. But I said, there's something you can do. And they said, what is that? Okay, I said, come over here. I said to the husband, I said, sit down at my table. I sat down next to him. I took a piece of paper. And I developed a frequency that was 11 integers long. I wrote out 11 numbers. And I said, now you sit here and you read these numbers over and over again about 20 times from left to right. Read the whole series of 11 numbers. And then read it again, and then read it again. Do that about 20 times. And they looked at me like I had 3 heads, but he went ahead and did it. And then we got done, and they said, now what? I said, that's it. I crumbled up the paper and threw it in the garbage. They said, is that all you can do for him? And I said, that's all anybody can do for him. And then the woman looked at me, and I wish I had a video of this elder, because then she said, what are you going to charge us for this? And I said, nothing. Just go your way in peace and be well. So anyway, they left, thinking I was crazier than a loon. The next morning, I got a phone call. She said, can we come by for just a couple of minutes? We don't want to waste much of your time. We just want to come by and show you something. I said, sure, come on by. So 10 o'clock, they come through the door. She says, show me your ankle. Most of the discoloration was gone. Most of the swelling was gone. The pink was coming back. He said he had no more pain. And they said, what did you do? I said, I didn't do anything. I said, who read the numbers, me or you? Well, I read the numbers, he said. I said, that's it. I said, you did it. I didn't do a thing. I said, every time you go to a pharmacy and fill a prescription, and when you put that compound in your mouth, you're self-treating. And I said, I wanted to make sure that you were self-treating here because it's illegal for me to treat. I'm not a medical doctor. Oh, I get it. But what happened? I said, that series of numbers, that was the frequency of the anti-venom serum. I said, you see, you had a neurotoxin in there, and there wasn't anything that would allow normal enzymes and other processes to break the toxin down. So I said, we just had you neutralize it with energy. He said, but I just read it. I said, yeah, but as you read it, you were potentiating that frequency in your field of consciousness. Okay? That means, Dr. Emoto's work is valid because your conscious field is actually a form of energy. And the more you think about something or meditate on something, the stronger it becomes. You can actually make yourself sick by dwelling on the wrong thoughts, negative thoughts, or you can make yourself well by dwelling on positive things. And I demonstrate that over and over again by developing these frequencies, and people go ahead and read them, and they get rid of some pretty severe problems in themselves by just reading these crazy frequencies. And it really, really seems to work. So that's just an illustration of the fact that we're just all energy. Everything out there is a manifestation of energy, all the cellular biology. In fact, everything that we perceive as matter in the universe is, in actuality, it's just different concentrations of structural patterns of waves that come together and form the elements on the periodic table. They come together to form compounds. don't be distracted by that. That's an illusion. The physical aspect of everything is the illusion. At the basis of it all is energy. Energy is the directorate. It's the conductor of the symphony. It can either be the kind of energy that your cellular biology thrives on, or it'll be the kind of energy that just tears you apart. So I developed something called a deluxe biodisc that produces a very fascinating type of energy, and it's quite a discussion in itself. I won't go into it in detail, but when I developed this device, it depends on a 1-inch diameter, real thin metal alloy disc. We found out how to put that metal alloy disc into a real high polarized atomic spin state. And it's so powerful that if you use it in the correct way, everything that it comes near will actually flip the electron. That's one of my expressions. It flips the electron from what we call spin up, which is left hand or negative energy, to spin down, which is right hand or positive energy. And just wearing a card, it can do some amazing things to problems in your hyperfield, your biological field. I've had people that have been in severe pain for up to a decade, have tried everything out there, and virtually nothing touched their pain. They get this crazy little card and wear it, and pretty soon their pain is going away. Well, you've got to understand, when you're injured, you actually set up a negative energy field over the injury. In other words, every cell in your body has a complete replicate of your whole energy field around it. When you damage cells, you damage the field. Now that field damage, we'll call it a blockage, becomes the greatest impediment to the proper healing and repair of that injury. In other words, you become your own worst enemy in a sense. So if you had a way of breaking that energy blockage down, the healing and repair from some unforeseen accident or incident, some accident would just heal much better. The healing would be much quicker, much more accurate, much more complete. So that's what tends to happen as a result of putting this biodisc to work. And then it went way beyond that. Now this is a discussion that would I go out and I'm flown all over the country, and I put on workshops, and I'll teach for 2 to 3 days. And I'm rushing to get everything into 2 days. So you can imagine how I'm rushing to get enough information into this hour-plus discussion to make it, sound halfway complete and coherent and sensible. So anyway, what I've accomplished is this. I believe I'm the first in history to successfully put to work what we call non-commutative mathematics and apply it to biological systems. And we're doing some amazing things with that. And it's all really deep but necessary energetic work. And we can deal with a number of different things. And we can do it with what we call non-commutative mathematics. And the basis for this technology, I call it my solid-state technology, is this deluxe biodisc in a special form. It's what we call a composite form. Because on one side of the disc is a geometry, and it doesn't work without that precise geometry. By the way, I have a U.S. copyright on that geometry, so don't try to ever plagiarize it, because I'll come after you if you do. But anyway,
that's right. I'll be with him.
Yeah, I went ahead and went back to the work of Werner Heisenberg in the 1930s when he developed what we call matrix calculus. Well, it wasn't matrix calculus. It was matrix mechanics. And Max Born pointed out to Warner that it was just matrix calculus is what it was. But anyway, I employed matrix calculus, and we superimposed another grid pattern over the geometry that's already there. And now we get a very, very powerful engagement with the hypothalamus gland in the brain, which is involved in pretty much all healing and repair. So now we've got a very powerful tool, and it employs the use of a disc made out of brass, and then it employs mathematically calculated geometries on clear film. And they have to be used in a certain order and in a certain way. And if this technology is used correctly, you get some real profound effects. If it's used wrong, you don't get any effect at all. So it's impossible to use the geometry incorrectly. You could never hurt a fly with it. You can't overdo it. All you can do is underdo it. If the body doesn't have anything for the energy to work on, it simply ignores the energy. That's the beauty of this system. Absolutely impossible to use it wrong. You can't make a mistake. It is simply not possible to make a mistake with it. The only mistake is failing to use it. So getting reports almost daily from people in the field all over the country, putting it to work, getting amazing results. And I guess there's probably things about the results people are getting I probably really shouldn't say on a radio broadcast of this nature. But in a private one-on-one conversation, I could share more information. But I guess I'm just hesitant to do that. All in all, I'm pretty proud of the accomplishments of the water, and then the solid-state technology, and I'm really pleased with what it's doing for people.
I'll have to chime in there, Dan. It really, after my NDE several years ago, and then shortly after that, I met you. And for the listeners that don't know about this, I was having trouble breathing. I was having trouble even to even speak.
You had some heart problems, didn't you, Albert?
Absolutely, some serious things going on, and I was recovering from some medications that the doctors had given me for the intense pain from the automobile accident. And that was a serious detox thing, and I started drinking your water after I met you in Paradise Valley, Montana. And, well, when I walked up to the bottle of the water, we had that meeting there in Immigrant, and I was so thankful that I was invited by the guys out there to meet you. And it's been great working with you ever since, but when I walked into the kitchen area after your discussion, I just held my hand over a bottle of the water. And this is not the case for everyone. I'm just very, very sensitive to subtle energies, but I could feel the energy coming off the jug just by holding my hand on it. And then shortly after that, when I started drinking it straight, at that time, which is what we were doing with the water, I felt so much energy. It was just, I could speak again. I could have long conversations. I could walk, get around, not get winded. Didn't feel like I was suffocating. And I got one heck of a detox reaction from it because it was actually penetrating the blood-brain barrier and going in and pulling out these residuals from the medications that I was on, and God only knows what else we've been breathing here in this on this planet recently out of my head. And I have to say, folks, I owe my life. It's a large part because of this collaboration with Dan and what he's been doing for me, and doing for so many other people, our members. Over the years with the water, people continue to get this water, and you're not getting irrigated, you're getting hydrated, you're getting so much energy, getting information with it. It's just a wonderful thing, and I believe in my heart firmly that this is going to help raise consciousness because of the consciousness in the water. And being that we're mostly water, it only stands to reason that if you put a lot of good water that's going to penetrate the cell into your body, and it has this type of energy in it, then you're definitely going to get some benefits. It's going to change your life.
Yeah. In fact, I don't know if you remember this, Elder, but when I first worked with you, you had a dangerous acidic pH of 4.4. Remember that?
Yes, I did.
And within about 4 or 5 weeks on the water, we had it up almost to 7. I think it was up to 6, 8 or something like that.
Didn't take long at all, and my pH changed.
Oh. So I know there's a lot of people that think pH is everything. It's important, but it's not everything. Hydration isn't everything. pH has to be, ideally slightly in the alkaline range, but it in itself isn't everything. The energetic aspect of the biological system isn't everything, but I'm quickly learning that it's most of everything. And that's the first place we go. I had some folks I had a young lady in my house today who had some serious problems. They brought her over from a city west of me, from Missoula, Montana, and it's 110 miles away, and she lost a stepfather, got killed in an accident, and she has some serious dysfunction. It's all emotional, all energy, so I showed her how we could go ahead and deal with those energies and get her going in the right direction again. It didn't take long to do it. And it's all a matter of taking and let's just lump it under the category of energy balancing. Balancing her out was easy. It took no time at all. And the next thing you know, I'll be hearing from those folks, and they'll be telling me how what appears to be ADD is not really there. That was just some energetic knots in her energy field. We needed to remove those so that everything can begin to function as normally as possible. And that's what this is all about, is a simple normalization of this organism to allow it to do what it's capable of doing. And there's any number of things that can happen to us that can send us spinning off in a different direction. So this is all lumped under the category of preventative health care is what it is. Preventative maintenance. And I'm of the opinion you can do more with that than man could ever do in eternity with pharmacology. By far. Head and shoulders above pharmacology. Simple energy stuff.
Dan, I think we've had some people that some are dropping off, but we don't want to lose folks. They have some questions, and
Okay.
I'm going to be opening up some phone lines for individuals to ask some questions. I would like to state first that we want to try to stay away from any questions that would put Dan in the position to making any medical claims. Dan does not want to make any medical claims, as he stated earlier, that he is not licensed to make medical claims, and he doesn't want to go there with that. So much of what's being discussed is theoretical, even though it's showing more than theoretical results. We're kind of keeping it in that category, so I'm going to open up the line here. I'm going to bring Paul on right now. Paul, if you have some questions, go ahead and ask. Paul says he's not qualified on the chat here. He's not qualified to ask any medical questions. Well, I'm going to go.
Now we're even, Dan. You can't answer them because you're not qualified, and I can't ask them because I'm not qualified. So now we can talk.
Okay.
Now we can talk in hyper-theoretical means.
Okay.
I guess my biggest question is, since I spent some time in the military playing with particle beam cannons and the like, I'd like to ask some questions about how you imprint the water and what amount do you do it at a time, and are you using interferometry in respect to do that as far as how to energize the water using a laser, since it's coherent light, so you must be scanning it some way?
Well, this is not like any laser you've ever seen. I know they're making lasers now that operate in probably all parts of the visible electromagnetic spectrum, probably even infrared and ultraviolet. My laser operates in the near ultraviolet part of the spectrum. You can't see the particle wave. But my research is very interesting. I've discovered that the degree of coherence of this laser, this energy surpasses that of a normal laser by a factor of about 100. No matter where that laser is operating in the EM spectrum. So as I put to work the antiphoton and generate a time-reversed particle wave, this is not like any laser you've ever seen. This is all original proprietary work. And all I've got to do is expose water to the laser and be conscious of the potential, the energy potential I put in the water. I stick enough energy potential in the water. Well, for instance, I send to a bottling plant where it's made, I send what I call a super concentrate, which has a very high energy potential. And they have a tank that holds X number of gallons of water. So when they put a given amount of this, and it's all calculated to come out just right, they'll produce and bottle what we call a concentrate. Now, the concentrate comes in 500 milliliter bottles, or about 16.9 ounces. And each of those bottles will make, you can actually use just under 2 ounces to make a gallon of water. And the potential in that final product is more than adequate for the human organism and has all the energy you could possibly use. And but that's it. I mean, once it's used up, you need more concentrate. Otherwise, if you tried to produce another generation of water from that, you would the next generation would have huge dropouts in energy. In other words, it would just rapidly be extinguished or killed. What we're dealing with here is calculations in terms of potential levels, and we're dealing with thermodynamic considerations that cannot be violated. So, for instance, let's say you got your concentrate and decided you're going to try to stretch it as far as you can. Instead of 2 ounces, just under 2 ounces per gallon, you're going to use 1 ounce. Well, you run the risk of killing all the water. So it's like the concentrate sets off a thermodynamic chain reaction, okay? And if there isn't enough concentrate in the bulk property of raw water you add it to, there's a chance that the raw water will kill the energy in this water, and the chain reaction just won't get started. So it's like a nuclear fuel rod. You need a certain volume of radioactive material to sustain a chain reaction, okay? And it's the same with this technology.
So just over-diluting it discharges it to nothing, pretty much.
Yep. Over-diluting it discharges it to nothing, yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and another thing, too, Dan, is what do you suggest to use as the basis for the water to expand with in the ratio? Any special...
I'm suggesting any highly filtered water. Good spring water often works well. Some of the people that have sent me samples of well water, there are well waters that run from excellent to atrocious. So I realize that that's where I lose control in this whole thing, is I don't know what water they're adding it to. But a lot of people have asked me about reverse osmosis. Yes, that's acceptable. It'll work. Distilled, only if you're going to add at least a quarter of a teaspoon or more of, say, like Redmond's or a really high-quality sea salt back to the water, something that'll put some ions back in the water. I collaborated with Dr. Daryl Stoddard, who wrote the book Pain Free for Life. We both agree that water can't do you any good unless it can pass an electrical current. That's extremely important. In fact, if you use some real simple kinesiology, you can ask some questions, and every human being out there, if their body is basically consulted and you've added my energy to distill water, it'll say it can't benefit from the water. Don't put that in me. So a good spring water, something highly filtered through carbon charcoal will work, or through a ceramic filter. Some of those tend to be very good. I'm just saying this whole project is purist. When I went out to look for a custom bottling plant, the water I found is an exceptional water. It has a natural pH of 7.8. A very good water would be a water that comes out of an ionizer, where you can actually adjust the pH, say, to 8.5. That's ideal for the human body. If you can drink a water that has what we call a structured pH, not a chemical, but structured pH, that is a predominance of hydroxy ions that give it a pH of about 8.5, you got the best of all possible worlds. And if that water's been filtered so there's no chlorine or other harmful chemicals in it, then you're good to go with that. But I'd say any filtered water, just make sure you're not using pure, straight tap water with chlorine and all kinds of other junk in it.
Okay, one other question here, and then I'll step back. When it comes to your concentrated adding to another water, if the other water is real clumpy as far as charge is concerned, your concentrate then equally propagates throughout the water and makes it all the correct geometric shapes?
Yep. The thermodynamic, well, let's put it this way. All of the mathematics that goes into understanding the thermodynamics of this says that when it's added to the other water, it's a total knockdown. I mean, well, people often talk about clustered water, okay? As soon as somebody mentions clustered water, I know they have absolutely no idea what they're talking about when it comes to water. So if there's anything, I've even had, I've taken water with high chlorine content, and we've added my concentrate to it, and 10 minutes later, you cannot find the chlorine in the water. You cannot find it. It just molecularly breaks it down. In fact, I'm not so sure it doesn't do that to maybe all harmful chemicals. But I'm saying I don't know that for sure because I haven't done enough testing in that regard. You're better off starting with a pure filtered water to begin with.
Thanks a lot, Dan.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. I'm going to bring, I'm going to bring Peter on. Peter, you have questions for Dan?
Yes, I do. Dan, first of all, I'd like to thank you for the research that you have accomplished and the information that you're putting out there for all of us. I think it's fabulous. And what I'd like to ask you, if it's possible, Paul and I have been doing quite a bit of research with water over the years. We both have a John Ellis machine, and one of the questions that I have, is there a life cycle termination for your water? How long will it last? Does it deteriorate over a period of time? Can we use it in a concentrated form? Does that help? Some questions like that.
Yeah, well, the water doesn't have a shelf life. What I do to it is permanent. If it's stored in an appropriately hard container. Now, I highly recommend when people get my concentrate, it's going to come in a real stable #1 PETE plastic, and that's the only practical way to ship water, especially from where it's bottled in the Colorado Rockies in an altitude of 8,000 feet. You can imagine what the weather is like up there a good part of the year. If we had freezing problems, it would easily break a glass container. Ideally, it should be shipped in glass, but it's not in the plastic long enough to detect any toxic chemicals from the plastic being leached into the water. So I recommend mixing it in glass. Get yourself a glass gallon container or a couple of them if you can. People tell me, well, I can't find a glass container. Oh, well, go to Walmart and get a Sun tea jar. They're made out of glass. That'll work. I know that on the Internet you can find a source for glass jugs. They're sold. There's a market for them. And that's what I mix my water in, is glass. As long as it's in a really hard plastic or in glass, it'll last indefinitely. But if you mix my water and put it in an old gallon milk jug, within 48 hours the energy's deader than a doornail. The plastic is too soft. It's like the difference between waves and water hitting a real hard surface and reflecting off, or the waves coming up on a nice soft sandy beach and the energy being absorbed. In time, a soft plastic will kill it. So That's one of the only considerations, other than microwave. If you put it in a microwave within 60 seconds, it's better than a doornail.
That's excellent information. What I'd like to share with people is that there is glass bottles. We have found some. It's called Fuse, F-U-Z-E, or F-U-S-E, and you can buy them off of the internet, or you can buy them from a local distributor. And I found mine at Costco, Sam's, those sort of things. They sell them 24 in a case, and there's like 4 or 5 different flavors. Pour the flavors or drink the flavors, and then peel the labels off, and then you get yourself a real nice glass bottle, easily used for transportation or whatever. And I've been sharing that with a lot of people. So the main concern that I have is that I want to be able to share this with people. If I have your water and I'm able to put that into the water that I have purified already, then what I'm concerned with is what kind of percentage, because these are like 16-ounce bottles, would I use like 1 ounce of your water in a concentrated form to add to that water? And then also... to a
16-ounce bottle?
Yes.
Well, let's see. How many 16-ounce bottles are there in a gallon? 8?
It's 64 ounces to a gallon.
No, 128 ounces.
28, I'm sorry.
Yeah. 8.
128 divided by 16. 8, right.
Yeah, 8 16-ounce bottles. Yeah, so you would use, basically you would use about 1/4 of an ounce.
For 8?
For a 16-ounce bottle.
For 8 16-ounce bottles, okay.
Yeah, in each bottle you would put 1/4 of an ounce.
Okay. What would be the effect if you were to take the concentrate?
Well, I've had people drink the concentrate. It's a waste of your economic resources, but a lot of people have noticed it clean them out real fast.
Okay.
Like some fairly rapid diarrhea, that type of thing. That's one of the things I should say about the water. Even the mixture, you cannot just start drinking as much water as you want. This water is the world's grand champion at the Hertzheimer effect. It will precipitate a detox. It's world class. Trust me. When those cells begin to hydrate, and you would be surprised if you drank 2 ounces of my water, how many million cells are hydrated by 2 ounces of water. The first thing they'll do is purge. They'll puke out all the poisons. As soon as they get water inside, that's what they want to do, is clean. And it's easy to become simply overwhelmed. So I'll tell you what I've been telling people. When you make the mixture, you want to drink probably 2 ounces of the mixture twice a day. That's no more than 4 ounces a day for a good 2 to 3 weeks. And then I tell people from there you go up an additional 2 ounces each time. You'll go from 2 ounces twice a day to 4 ounces twice a day for an equal time period. Then you go to 6 ounces twice a day for 2 to 3 weeks, and then 8 ounces twice a day for 2 to 3 weeks, and then go up an additional 4 ounces, which is 20. Eventually, there's no reason to drink any more than 24 ounces of this water a day, because you can completely hydrate on 16 to 24 ounces of this water a day. See, that's the difference. We're talking about extreme hydration efficiency here. And the fact that, my goodness, I had people come to me drinking 2 to 3 gallons of water a day, really dehydrated. And then I had somebody in my house today, and they're talking about, well, they have all this edema. Oh, and I can't drink your water. I said, no, whoa, back up here. What do you think causes edema? Edema is caused by extreme dehydration. You need to drink my water if you've got edema. But if you drink normal water, which doesn't do much other than irrigate you, you can add to your problems if you have edema, but not with my water. That my water will begin to displace that dead, inefficient water and be a huge difference. I told Elder that sometimes people come to my door. I'm doing this from my living room, and I have to break off for just a couple seconds here. Somebody's at my door. I'll be right back. Go ahead and entertain them, Elder.
Sure. I'll just go ahead and, while Dan's taking care of his caller there.
Elder, I do have another question related to that.
Oh, sure. He'll be back with us here in just a moment. He said there might be somebody dropping in. That happens.
This deals with you.
Huh?
This deals with you.
Oh, okay.
in the bottling, is it possible to, when we place an order with you, is it possible to put in a request for a concentrate rather than diluted? Or is what you have already concentrated?
Well, you're getting a concentrate. When it's made at the bottling facility, Dan takes a super concentrate. He makes a super concentrate. That super concentrate is then added to the vat of this pristine water. It comes from an 8,000-foot aquifer down in the Colorado Rockies. That then makes the concentrate, which is then bottled and sent out to our members. And that is what you take and make your mix with your water, 2 ounces per gallon.
Okay, for a detox program, and let's say somebody's got a serious problem like gallbladder stones or something that they are held up in bed with, and you have something like this that would alleviate the problem because now the body is being able to function. What sort of concentrate could you increase the concentration for a short period of time for the detox so that the healing crisis would allow itself to purge?
My thought on that is that you want to start out and see what you can do. See what you can do first. Like Dan recommends, starting out with a little bit at a time, see how your body works, how it reacts, and then work your way up. When I first started doing the water when it came out original in the 2-liter bottles about 6 years ago, I drank an entire 2-liter bottle over the period of 2 days. My head felt like a grape being peeled with a chainsaw. It was a dull headache that lasted for a week. I mean, the energy was out the roof. I mean, I felt so good. I was doing things I hadn't done in a long time. But the detox was really, really rough on my head. The whole top of my head was just a dull, aching pain, and there was nothing that I could do to get rid of that headache, nothing at all. So I recommend that you start out, as Dan says, start out a little bit at a time and work up. A lot of people have a lot of toxins already built up, and we don't want to have them too uncomfortable when they're starting with the detox that's created due to the energy and the hydrating ability of the water.
Does this work with addictions like nicotine, alcohol, some of those kind of addictions that as you're detoxing that you have those cravings any longer?
Well, it tends to, but you have to understand there's some really deep emotional stuff also involved with that stuff. And it may require additional work. So, yeah, I could honestly say take any diagnosed condition, any condition you can imagine, and reports have come back to me where people have gotten tremendous results on those conditions. And of course, if I relate those, I understand that's illegal. I can't give. I can only give my own testimonial.
Yes.
Yeah, but I've heard amazing stories coming back from the field. Just astounding things happening for people.
How long have you actually been doing this? I know that there's going to be a number of people that have never heard of this before, and the first question out of their mouth is, "Well, how long has he been doing it?"
Well, I've been doing it just a little over 6 years. But I'll tell you something. One of the first things that let's say that people out there and their intentions were good, they started calling me to advise me, and they said, you know what you got here really works, so here's what you need to do. You need to keep your big mouth shut.
I agree.
Seriously.
I agree.
And they said no website, keep off the internet,
word of mouth
material, no claims. All it can do is spread word of mouth. So
absolutely.
That being the case, yeah, after 6 years, there's still a very small percentage of the population that's heard about this, and that's the only way you can do it. And that's well, we all know why.
Well, yeah, when we're talking about things like that, we're talking about alternative energy and everything else that's been suppressed. Yeah. And we're real familiar with that. So what we're asking is for our group, there's a number of people that are studying health is a major issue. And word of mouth works real well because it's the greatest testimony that you can have.
That's right. Yeah. Unfortunately, the comment I get the most frequently is people say, I want to tell so-and-so about your water. I just don't know what to say about it, and nobody can explain it as well as you can. Well, obviously, I'm the physicist that developed it, so I had to have a profound understanding of what I was doing, or I would never have accomplished it. I wouldn't have accomplished anything. It's like there's a lot of waters that are sent to me and that I analyze, and there's really nothing to these waters. They're people are much more proficient and talented at saying nice things about a product than they are actually producing a product that works. Let's put it that way. And boy, there's a lot of hype out there on the internet about different products, and they're saying amazing things about them. But when push comes to shove, there is nothing behind those products. They're just not really what you'd call any type of a technological achievement there at all.
Are there devices that a layperson can use to test the water so that they can have at least basic understanding of what you're putting across to us?
Well, a lay device, there's a gentleman that has made these L rods out of copper, and they effectively demonstrate the size and strength of the energy field around a bottle. A simple pendulum will do the same thing. I know that's not viewed by most people as science, but as a physicist, I delved into that, and there are scientific principles which govern the operation of such simple devices, and they're basically not viewed as, that's not science, but it's basically rooted in principles that are as scientifically sound as anything else out there. So
I totally agree. I grew up as a farmer, and we used a divining rod to find water and for irrigation purposes. So anybody that would come along and say, "What are you doing?" and we'd show them that, it was usually a divining stick made out of willow, and it would point down, and people would say, "Oh, no, he couldn't." And we'd dig down a short ways, and there was water, and they would scratch their head like, "How did you know that?" I said, "Well, we've been doing this for 100 years, and it always works." So
yeah, when I was in Branson, Missouri a couple of years ago, there was a gentleman, and I knew what the energy field around my water was. And he came up to me and he said, I measured the energy field around your water, and he said it dropped off at X number of feet, and my instrumentation was about 1.5 foot difference than his measurement. And I thought, given the distance to begin with, it was an incredibly small percentage of the total difference. That was scientifically accurate as far as I'm concerned. It was certainly within tolerance as far as anything that you would consider accurate. I had to commend the man for making such an accurate measurement with a simple device. See, I believe he was using a pendulum.
So would you say that if a person took a bottle of your water and took it to bed with them at night and put it, say, on their body wherever the aches and pains were, that they probably would find that it would be lessened significantly?
Yeah, we've had people do that. What you can actually do by keeping, there are some people that, believe it or not, cannot even drink this water to begin with. So we have them put it in a small bottle and carry it on them. And the field around the bottle integrates with their field, and it begins to make changes, okay? And eventually they get to the point where they might be able to drink 1 ounce once a day. There are some people that can't drink it. And what you'll find is one of their 3 majoring interior filter systems, one or more of those systems is plugged. It'll either be liver, spleen, or kidneys. If they have one or more of those plugged, they can't tolerate the water because there's no place for the toxins to go. Once the toxins come out of the cells, they're just going to be recirculated unless they can get out of the body. So people that have filters plugged, they cannot tolerate the water. It makes them extremely ill. That's simply because, the water doesn't have the capacity or ability to make anybody sick. But you have to define, what does the word sick mean? Sick means I don't feel good, and not feeling good could be, based on some type of positive process being turned loose in the body, such as detox. That could be what you define as sick. So yeah, the water can precipitate, as Elder said, a real uncomfortable detox crisis. A very common one is headaches. The first thing this water will do is begin to chelate heavy metals out of the body and take plaque out of your arteries. And as the mercury comes down, it'll come out of the brain, it'll come down the brainstem. You can actually end up with a real nagging headache in the back of your head for about 3, 4, 5, 6 days. And it'll go on all day and all night, and there's nothing you can do to get rid of it. You
What about
just have to...
What about having the mercury fillings taken out of your teeth before you do this?
I highly recommend that, but that's not necessary because I still have a few in my mouth. I went through about 4 days of those nagging headaches, and now in a blue moon I'll get one. But we've always got mercury, getting up into the brain from the fillings in the mouth, and the body goes ahead and pulls those. In fact, I had a gentleman who was dying of mercury poisoning. He was a metallurgist, and he and his partner were not being very careful, and his partner actually died from mercury poisoning, and he was on his way to dying. He was very ill, and the water pulled all the metals out of his body, and it was really strange because his wife said, show Dan that thing on your back. I'd like to know what he thinks it is. Well, he took his shirt off, and there was this patch about the size of my fist on the left side between the shoulder blade and the spine, and it was multicolored. It was oozing pus and blood, and it was brightly colored, every color under the sun. And she said, "Is that cancer?" I said, No. I said, "That's where the heavy metals are coming out of the body. The body has created an orifice, and it's pushing the metals out the skin, and that particular point." And that's I've heard of that happening to a number of people.
Dan, Jennifer had a question.
Yeah.
She was wondering if the water would help chelate silver that is accumulated in her fingers and maybe some other parts of her body, but it's in her fingers. I'm sure probably some other places too. Some of this high ppm colloidal type silver that's really not so good out there. Yeah,
it does. It pulls that out too. People, you have to recognize, well, for instance, the body has a need for an unstable isotope of silver. It's isotope 105. And we're finding that isotope 105 tends to work as good as, if not better than, colloidal silver. I've never known anything to grow in this water. It keeps itself pure, and one of the aspects that's doing that is the energy of silver isotope 105. But anything in a metallic state is a toxin. Anything. That includes silver. Why do you think silver kills over 600 known pathogens? It's a toxin, and it's a toxin to you and I. In time, it'll toxify you, and it can potentially kill you. So I'm not a great proponent of colloidal silver. I have found much quicker and much more efficient ways of getting rid of pathogens in the human body that puts, as far as I'm concerned, colloidal silver to shame. So, yes, the water will help chelate the silver out of the system.
So you've noticed some instances, Dan, where parasitic organisms aren't getting along with the valence energy of the silver isotope that's encoded into the water. Yes, and also my solid-state technology. Right, the biodisc system. Yeah. I had a veterinarian come to my house. It's been about 8 weeks ago, and a lady in his church told him about me, and he had contracted Lyme's disease from working on animals, and he was really, really sick. And he was open-minded enough that, he decided to come see me, and it took 30 seconds, and I haven't heard a word from the man since. And the woman who sent him to me, she came to my house 2 weeks ago to get more water. And I didn't even bring it up. She brought it up. She said, "Have you heard from the veterinarian?" I said, "Not a peep."
She said, "Well, you will." He's talking about bringing a son to you. She said, "You turned his life around. He's a completely different human being." And this often happens. You'll work with people, and they'll take your product, they'll go away, and it'll turn their life around. They won't even bother to thank you. You won't even hear from them again. But I don't know. He must be just terribly busy or something. But she said, yeah, he intends to come see you and bring his son to you. But it took 30 seconds, and draw your own conclusions. Now, it's not the first time it's happened. I've had people come to me with Lyme's, 30 seconds, and then they go to their medical doctor, and what I hear back is that they can't find any sign of the Lyme's. Gone. Totally gone. How about that? It's actually a sensitive organism if you know what kind of energy to expose it to. It's a lot more sensitive than most people realize.
Dan, I have a question.
Yes.
This is Peter in Sacramento. One of the things that I know that in talking with people, they ask real basic questions like, like I mentioned before, how long have you been doing it? The other question would be the bottle facility, the water bottling facility, and the whole process. And my question, of course, we're involved in this at the early stages. How much do you think the general public needs to know in terms of where the water comes from, how it's changed with your process, how it's then taken to Elder and then bottled, and if there's a capability of producing even more, or if there's just a limited amount?
Well, we're not even beginning to tap the man's capacity for producing water. He would like very much to sell water. And we're not, what we're doing here is pretty lazy production right now. And so in actuality, most people don't really need to know very much in terms of the details. All they need to know is here's a water, it's a concentrate, mix it this way and drink it this way, and it's good for you. And it'll hydrate you much better than the water that you've been drinking, no matter what that water is. I don't care what bottled water it is, who makes it, what process is involved in making it. This water will definitely hydrate in a superior manner.
If we were to put together a group of people to come and visit you, would you allow us to do that?
That would be fine with the understanding that my technology is proprietary.
Oh, absolutely. No, we just
there's certain aspects of this I don't show anybody.
Right. No, we're just interested in meeting with you and getting a feel for what you're doing, not to copy it or steal it or anything like that. We're just
No. I understand that. Yeah.
Right. Because we had talked to Elder about possibly having you come down to Denver to put on a professional showing so that we could at least have that capability.
Okay, yeah, right, yeah.
Right. So perhaps over the next couple of months we can coordinate something like that, and there'll be just a small group of us come visit you and share our stories with you and have an opportunity to learn more from a firsthand level.
Right. Yeah, that would be fine. I have people come to see me from all over the United States. Yeah, that'd be fine. Absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, we'll coordinate that with Elder then.
Okay.
So how do we get more of your water?
Just give me a call.
Okay.
If anybody has any questions about the water, you can contact me at my phone number, 706-937-7379, or email me at elder7@rangeguide.net, or you can always find out more about the water and Dan and some past interviews I've done with Dan and what we're doing by going to rangeguide.net.
One of the other questions, too, Elder, will be when people listen to this, they'll say, well, how do I become a master distributor, or how much do I have to buy in order to get it at a discount rate? Do you have something set up at this time for that?
Well, we do have a special program I started recently. It's called the Stone Kingdom, where people can, if they're going to be committed to servicing their community, In other words, they're just not buying this for themselves and trying to get a break, which we can't give too much more of a break more on the water than it is already. But for special people that are committed to serving their community, they can purchase as a coordinator with the Stone Kingdom. You can find out more about the Stone Kingdom on rangeguide.net. The whole idea for the Stone Kingdom is to help establish a new way of sharing these good things that, like Dan has provided for us with the water and the biodis systems and other things that he's doing at a cost that will pass on the good feeling and a good spirit of sharing information without trying to add a whole lot of money, making a big money issue out of it. This can be made available at cost for people that want to get involved as a Stone Kingdom coordinator. And some of the people on here tonight are Stone Kingdom coordinators just listening to the broadcast that are helping their community, sharing the products that made available on rangeguide.net at cost. And you can read more about that then when you go to rangeguide.net and click on the Stone Kingdom, and you can learn how to be a Stone Kingdom coordinator.
I think that's fantastic news. There's been a lot of information that's been put out there primarily by word of mouth, and when people find it, they have a different enthusiasm rather than seeing it just as a price commodity. When they see value added to something, they tend to want it and be able to share that with their friends because they understand the true value of it.
Indeed. And I've tried to steer away from multi-level, although some things that's the only way you can get is through multi-level or network marketing like that, because it just creates so much competition with other people in the community. The whole idea with Stone Kingdom is to eliminate all of the competition and actually encourage other members in the community to come and get it from the local coordinator, different products like the water, and share it and maybe mark it up a little bit themselves. And for their energy that they're putting into getting the good word out, they can profit, or they can get some compensation for their work, by passing on the good information to others. Well, folks, we're getting close to the end of this broadcast. Certainly appreciate if anybody has any more questions now. Now's the time to ask. We can still continue. If Dan wants to stay on, we can still continue this recorded conversation that we've archived on rangeguide.net on the Talk Shoe badge that you will see at rangeguide.net. And so if you have any more questions, now would be a good time to ask. Otherwise, we'll be closing here very shortly.
Elder, I'll make one comment before we go any further. I work in close association with a biochemist that's an absolutely brilliant individual. And this man found out about my water in the summer of 2004, asked me to send samples, which I did. And he told me, he said, I have one of the most sophisticated dark field microscopes in the world. It was custom built for me. Said the lenses were ground and figured out of quartz by Bausch & Lomb under license from Zeiss in Germany. He said they were sent to New York City for certification and verification. Everything was packaged up and sent to Japan for assembly. And this microscope takes 2 big tables to set up on. It's a huge thing. He says, well, how powerful is this microscope? He said, let's put it this way. I can take you down inside the mitochondria in a cell and give you a tour inside of it. But he said, in my career, he said, I probably analyzed between 40 and 50,000 blood samples. And he says, you know what the primary cause of all those problems in the bloodstream is? He says, it's dehydration. And between dehydration and maybe the need for some additional electrolytes, because the reason cells clump together is because the cell membrane wall loses its proper charge. He said that what he's been doing is he'll take a live blood sample, and they'll be watching it on the monitor and talking about it and analyzing it. And he said then he has the person drink 4 ounces of my water. He says, and I take another sample as soon as that water hits their stomach. And I said, why so soon? He said, because if it's what you say it is, he says, it's already in the bloodstream. It's gone through the mucosal lining of the mouth. It's in the bloodstream. I said, well, what do you see? He said, well, what I'm seeing is the most profound and positive change in blood composition that I've ever seen in my career. So in his words, and these are not mine, these are his, he says, I believe your water is the world's premier health and wellness product. In fact, he said it's head and shoulders above everything else out there. I don't care who makes the product or what it is. He said that's the importance of hydration, and you're the guy who cracked the code when it comes to hydration. And it's in a league of its own, head and shoulders above everything else. So that's not the first time I've gotten comments of that nature from people. They said, we've never heard of any one product doing as many things as this water does. I said, well, is it really that it's such a great water, or if, think about it. I don't care where the water source is. It's what we're doing to water. And that illustrates the importance of proper hydration, okay? So what we've got here is we simply have the tool to affect proper hydration. And proper hydration is the key. It gets all kinds of things done for you. And that's what we're offering, is a vehicle to proper hydration. Now, I've had people say, well, does that mean I have to drink your water the rest of my life? And I said, no, you don't have to do anything. But shortly after you cease drinking it, you'll dehydrate again. Within about 4 to 5 weeks, you'll begin to show signs of dehydration. I've had a lot of people quit drinking the water, and the next thing you know, they're back and they're saying, I quit drinking your water now, I just don't feel as good. Well, because when your body was hydrated, it was working much more efficiently. And then I tell them, if I honestly knew of a simpler, easier, more efficient way of hydrating, I'd let you know. I would let you know, because in my book, the most important thing is helping people. And I've dedicated myself to that now for 6 years, and I've never deviated. It's never become about lots of money and profit. It's been about first help people. So we do that. We see them make changes in their lives, and the next thing you know, they're telling somebody else. And pretty soon, we see the volume of water being sold going up and up, and so the revenue increases. Just make it affordable, reasonable for people, and they'll send more people to you. And if they're not getting results, they're not going to continue to drink the water, and they're certainly not going to tell anybody else about it. So started with a handful of people, and now it's up to many hundreds of people, and it's growing all the time. And these people, if there's one thing they stay on, it's this water. They may use other products, nutritional type products, and for a period of time, and then they'll realize they're not really helping them anymore. Maybe they never helped them in the first place. They'll drop those, but the one thing you'll find that they will not quit using is this water. That's the importance of hydration. I can't overemphasize how important hydration is. That's the key to everything. That's why Dr. Batman Gajli from Iran wrote the book, Your Body's Many Cries for Water. He was force-feeding prisoners to drink as much water as they could get inside of them, and they were coming out of all kinds of different serious health conditions because dehydration is a component in most conditions, particularly bowel problems. When people call me, some of their first comments, the first thing they notice, I can't believe how much better my bowels work. Yep, that's because your bowel tissue itself is dehydrated. Your bloodstream dehydrates, your bowel tissue dehydrates. In fact, all the smooth muscle tissue, which is what the organs represent inside of you, and the glands are dehydrated. You've got to get everything hydrated, all the tissue. I got a sister that lives in Alabama where there's quite a bit more heat than there is in Montana, trust me, and a lot more moisture in the air. There's a lot more humidity. And she tells me if she isn't drinking my water, she notices her skin begin to wrinkle right away. So I've got that comment from a lot of people. Oh, skin looks better. Yeah, because it's hydrating. Therefore, I have just inexorably, and I have no choice in the matter but to conclude one of the most important things that you can do for the human body is to make sure it's adequately hydrated. And so I've made that possible, and that's where it is.
Dan, I tell you, I was doing some experiments, and you really can't get a accurate evaluation when you're testing new products for the members if you're doing so many different things. So I had to drop some things, including the water, just to get a good analysis of what I was testing. And I know one thing, that's the last time I do that, because it got pretty serious around Christmas time and early year of this year, because I had not been drinking the water. And as soon as I started back drinking the water, I began to feel so much better. And I encouraged Mother to continue to drink more of the water too. And she's been dealing with some congestive heart issues, and she's doing better because she's drinking the water as well.
Good.
Well, we can continue recording here. It's now 11, a little bit after 11, folks. If you have more questions, please feel free to ask. And Dan, if you have more comments, if you'd like to talk about any of the other technologies, feel free to do so.
I have a question.
Sure.
This is Peter again. Dan, one of the things, of course, I watched your DVD that you had, or the program that you put on in Branson in 2005, and absolutely sat on the edge of my seat watching it. It was so fascinating. And I've shared this information with other people. And what I find that really sticks with a lot of people is when you're talking about the changing of the molecular structure of isotopes and things like this, it gets pretty heavy for most people. The average couch potato doesn't understand that. But for some of us that really want to follow the dynamics of what you're talking about, when you started talking about gold and all the things that were related like this, for some people that was the catch that they could really understand, or at least get their hands around, because then they said, oh, now I understand that it's different than something else, because they see a lot of maybe television that's, oh, it's the water or whatever, and now you've come out with some information that's on an esoteric level, it's on an educational level, that appeals to the intellect. And I think, at least from my way of thinking, okay, let's try and get as many people involved with this, but maybe we have to start with the intellectual type first that can understand this, and then they pass it along in such a way that they can make it available for, because usually the educated people are a little more wealthier, not necessarily, but generally, and they can pass it along to others that maybe don't have the wherewith to grasp or understand what you're putting up on the board and talking about. So maybe you could comment about the elements of gold and how it relates to water.
Well, yeah, that was an aspect of the project in its inception. In the very beginning, I was involved with a gentleman, and they had made an interesting discovery, and that was that metals and even metalloids are actually all made from nothing but energy and water. This gentleman was making gold nuggets by putting 13 frequencies into water. And it was simply a hop, skip, and a jump from there to realize that biology didn't reinvent the wheel. The cells use energy in the water the same way that the energies can come together and form something material, such as a gold nugget. Now, when he made gold nuggets, they weren't pure gold. They also contained platinum and palladium, and I believe platinum is somewhere around $1,200 to $1,400 an ounce, and palladium is up around $400 to $500 an ounce, not far behind the value of gold. So it was very interesting. If you are dealing with electrical theory, let's say that somebody draws a schematic diagram and says, well, this is an illustration of what a sine wave is, a 60-cycle sine wave, okay? And this is your house current coming through the wall here. And then, of course, if the wave is higher, okay, that represents a stronger energy involved with that current. In our technology, we don't really refer to amplitude, we refer to potential. Now, an arbitrary potential scale was worked out. So they take this tank of water, and if they kept the potential level below 40,000, they would get this nugget. It weighed about 2 ounces. It was made of gold, platinum, and palladium. If they went above 40,000, they didn't get that nugget. They got a brick of copper. And if they went above 60,000 on this arbitrary potential scale, they didn't get a brick of copper. They got a tank of cyanide. So now, for the first time, I began to understand why they use cyanide to leach gold. It's not the cyanide that's leaching the gold. It's what the cyanide does to the water. It's the water that's leaching the gold. And the gold is not going into solution as little tiny particles. It's literally going into the water as nothing but pure energy, as its energy analog. And it can go back and forth. So I began to realize that, in effect, water becomes, in a sense, a true metaphor for a stargate. Okay, we believe that water is the formative agent of the planet. All of the elements are actually differentiated out of water. We know for a fact now, and this is based on work that's being done by some geologists and geophysicists. We know that petroleum, crude oil, is made from energy and water deep in the crust. It's always being made. That means that there's no such thing as a non-renewable resource. As I speak right now, petroleum is being made deep in the crust, and because it's lighter than water, it tends to be displaced by water, and it comes closer to the surface. Gold nuggets are being made. In fact, all the metals are being made from pure energy and water. There's no such thing as a non-renewable resource. But I guess there's the potential for us to use a resource quicker than it can be replenished. But the way the planet is somehow made, it's made to replenish these things indefinitely, and it does it with water. And when the water passes through mineral formations in the crust, if the right unstable isotopes are in those mineral formations, the water will pick up the frequency or the energy of the isotopes. And when the right complement of isotopes come together, meaning that you have the right complement of waveforms, then you'll have material matter actually formed from the water, coming from pure energy. And it was based on that realization. That was the impetus for bringing this water into existence. We realized, among other things, you could build the world's ultimate mineral supplement and not have a single, solid piece of that element in the water. It's in there purely as the energy analog or the waveform analog, and it does a perfectly adequate job of providing the nutritional minerals that the body needs. So, this in the beginning, we actually, the man involved with me worked with metallurgy. And his guy that was helping him was a nuclear engineer, and he also had one of the world's top geophysicists working with us. In fact, one of the first meetings I had on the phone was his friend, the geophysicist, wanted to make sure that when he was getting involved with me, he wasn't getting involved with a charlatan. So he got me on the phone, and then he mysteriously clammed up, and this geophysicist tied into me with some really technical but interesting questions, and I just calmly and methodically took care of his questions. And finally the guy said, "Oh, no," he said, "I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing." I said, "What?" He said, "You're making gyro water." He said, "What do you mean by gyro water?" And he, gave me this explanation. I said, "Oh, I get it. I know what you mean." I said, if if you mean that's a metaphor for water in a permanent high spin state, yeah, I said it's gyro water. In other words, what we're doing to the water tends to be a permanent state, unless there's some relatively severe interference with that permanent state that can actually change or kill that state. That's the only man that's ever used the term gyro water, as in a gyroscope, okay? So he understood that once the spin was imparted, the spin's permanent until you interfere with the spin. So I thought that was interesting, but had some very interesting things happen. The original partner had a heart attack, and he eventually ended up with 4 stents being installed in his heart. And he got to feeling bad again, and the doctor said either more stents or open heart surgery, bypass surgery. And my partner said, you mean you guys don't know how to prevent the accumulation of plaque, which is the real problem. In other words, all this other stuff is just a Band-Aid. And the doctor said, yeah, we don't know how to stop the accumulation of plaque. So they went to work on it, he and his friend, the nuclear engineer, and they figured out that the plaque in his heart was based on aluminum phosphate. Now, if you have somebody with Alzheimer's, they'll see a plaque in their brain, and that plaque is aluminum phosphate. Now, commonly, aluminum phosphate can get into the carotid arteries and into the coronary arteries, but I don't generally find it much lower than the heart. It tends to be calcium phosphate plaques that accumulate below that. But they discovered, based on the valence or electrical charge of the calcium phosphate, that if they took indium isotope 125 and just put the energy of indium isotope 125 into water, it would take the plaque out. Well, that was the theory. And it worked beautifully. Within 4 weeks, all the plaque was gone. All he did was drink the water with the energy of indium 125 in the water. So, of course, that's the nutritional form of indium that the body uses, and it's in this water. But he's never had a problem since. Cleaned his plaque out slick as a whistle, and he's 70, 71 years old. He can walk a 20-year-old to death in the hills. And that was a man that couldn't climb a flight of stairs without having to sit down and get his wind.
I know that feeling.
Yeah. So anyway, this project in the beginning, it has some very interesting origins. There's some really technical stuff that goes into this water. It's truly a project based in pure science, and a lot of the stuff out there, I hate to say it, is just kind of woo-woo stuff. They'll say all these fancy, they'll spout out these fancy terms and these flowery sentences and paragraphs, and you get right down to the nitty gritty, and they have no idea what they're talking about. There's just people that are really good at spinning dialogue, and that's about it. That's where most of these projects end, is with fancy dialogue, and there's it's like a dog that's all bark and no bite.
Well, these waters that you that were tested in, wasn't it maybe Colorado, Dan, when they were testing with dehydrated splices of 4 different kinds of meat to check the absorption rate?
Yeah, that was, they were using tissue from pork, beef, chicken, and turkey. And they were testing my water against 19 other samples. And the guy said the other water samples showed a minimum of 3 days to show any hydration. And he said, this is kind of funny. I laughed good about this one. He said, I don't want you to get a big head, he said, but your water went in and hydrated in 10 minutes. But you see, it's easier to hydrate a plant cell than it is a cell from a mammal. Plants are designed to take in a slightly bigger water particle. Nominally, rainwater comes down at about 130 nanometers. And a plant cell does really, really well on rainwater at 130 nanometers. But you go ahead and water your lawn with water that comes from a city system, you'll notice it doesn't do near as good a job as at revitalizing and hydrating the plants as rainwater does. That's because the rainwater particle is smaller. And so if you want to hydrate tissue from mammals, birds, fish, reptiles, whatever, you need an even smaller water particle than you're giving to the plant. Boy, we've got it down to where one discerning individual on a call said, I know what you're doing. You're stopping just short of turning water into a gas. And I said, bingo, right on the money. I said, you can't get the water particle any smaller. We're making the smallest water particles that nature, that define water. If they go any smaller, the water becomes a gas. And there is a gas. You can turn water into a gas that's called Brown's gas. And you can do amazing things with Brown's gas, like you can weld dissimilar metals like aluminum and stainless steel together. You can weld underwater with it. Brown's gas has amazing properties. Really neat stuff.
And we're breathing a certain amount of water.
Yep.
Every day. And with some other things that we prefer not to breathe with it, but in the air. Yeah.
And those are little tiny water droplets. They're still made out of the big size water particles, though. Yeah, water vapor is just little tiny droplets of the big size water particles for the most part. You'll notice a difference, boy, if you take my water and boil it. It'll stay in the sub-nano state and put it into the atmosphere and breathe it like in the winter when your house is really dry. You'll notice a difference. The vapors are much different than normal water. It'll penetrate. You can get more through the pulmonary alveoli in the lungs than you can through the alveoli in your small intestine. A very, very good way to get this water into your system is to breathe it. Vaporize it in the winter and breathe it into your lungs. And the pulmonary alveoli will take it into your bloodstream very, very quickly. There's more than one way to skin a cat, right, Elder?
That's right.
And I know that's a Georgia statement.
That's right. Is there any precautions as far as storing or shelf life or things that we don't want to do with the water? I know that there's certain things. I've been experimenting with water and other things like the Miracle 2 neutralizer and the Spark of Life that you got to test there in Montana. That the stuff literally jumps out of the bottle with so much energy. Any comments about that, or magnets, or any magnetic fields, or?
No, magnetic fields have no effect on it. You can go through scanners at the airport; they don't affect it. I would recommend if you're running a microwave, try to keep it about at least 5 feet away from the microwave.
So the virtual
microwave energy is just the wrong frequency.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I won't put anything in it.
And when it spins the water molecule, it really screws up the thermodynamics of it. And just keep it away from microwave. Otherwise, I've taken bottles of water, totally froze them, solid through and through, rethawed them. All the energy's still there. Refreeze it, rethaw it. I've done that up to half a dozen times in the same water. No effect on the energy. If you boil it, the energy's still there. So you can heat the water. Yeah, you can make soup out of it, stew, tea. I hate to say it, but coffee. Okay. Anything of that nature you can do with the water. We were taking the water and we'd take eggs and we'd check these eggs, and there wouldn't be a very good mineral content in the eggs, and we'd boil them in the water, hard boil them, and they would come out completely, totally mineralized.
Whoa! That's awesome.
Here's a strange thing. We had a chemist in L.A., and every year this guy makes ginger beer. He said he used our water to make the ginger beer. It was the best ginger beer he'd ever made, and it was totally mineralized. Okay. Now, if you were into making home brew, you can make home brew in about half the time with this water. Yeah, because the organisms responsible for fermentation, they like the energy in this water too. It really speeds up the process. You make the smoothest, best tasting beer you've ever made in your life. Yep, absolutely true.
Well,
people use it on their skin. It absorbs from the outside very, very easily. Women love it.
And I wouldn't doubt that some people, without mentioning any names, are using this water or may want to use this water in their product, their health products.
Yeah, it makes other health products. In fact, it makes everything you take into your body work better. It's like a catalyst. I hate to say it, but it even makes your pharmaceuticals work better. People taking pharmaceutical medications notice that within a short amount of time they have to cut them in half.
Oh, in other words, it increases the absorption of the ingredients.
Yeah, and
in
increases the absorption tremendously. Any nutrient you take, it makes it work better. Now, I've had people tell me that were injured, like athletes. They said the recovery rate using this water was almost spooky. It was so fast. People with surgeries. I had a lady who had a hip replacement. She told me the doctor could not believe that she used virtually no painkiller after the operation. And the doctor said he'd never seen anybody heal that quick. It's the water. I've had a number of people go through surgeries, and the doctors are amazed by the recovery and healing rate. That's what hydration does for you. There's all kinds of things I'm probably not even thinking about right now. But there's just all kinds of things just simply work better when you drink a water that actually hydrates.
And people probably use it transdermally too.
Transdermally, yep.
Go ahead.
I don't want to make any claims, but I've had some women report weight losses eventually of up to 80 pounds just drinking the water. That's one of the components of a real responsible weight loss program. They tell you to increase your consumption of water, and among other things, very, very important for helping the liver dump. Well, yeah, okay, drink this water. The most lucid, vivid, full technicolor dreams I've ever had in my life come from drinking this water. That's often reported to me. Just people just start dreaming like it was going out of style. The lady that told me she's never remembered a dream in her life, she says, all of a sudden I remember these dreams. They're very, very vivid. So the water works at many levels, even the psychological and emotional level.
Well, this new energy that I am really excited and looking forward to, because so many people, Dan, are going through these very anxious moments in these very anxious times, and it's all caught up in these filters that we create, and of course we're getting some electronic pollution and smog and other things going on, and we're picking up some of these parasitical, like I describe them as like parasites, type of engrams or energy fractals from other people that's affected, because I definitely believe in collective consciousness, and this is a collaborative. I don't know, some of you may have seen the movie Phenomenon. I firmly believe in this collaborative effort with all things. And on that note, I have to say, Dan reminds me a lot of the character in that program. Dan has some very special gifts that he's not talked about, but I'll say this, folks. He has some very unique abilities to be able to sense things and do things that he's just on a very high frequency level. Dan, I'm just going to open it up to you there to speak about yourself, and I know you're not bragging about yourself or anything, but I'm bragging about you because I think you're a special guy, and I really appreciate you being on this broadcast for the premiere of Range Guide Radio tonight. And I'd like for you to tell folks a little bit more about yourself in this regard, if you don't mind.
Well, I guess I was born and raised in Montana here, still here in the capital city, and I love it here. And I used to teach astrophysics, but my passion is quantum mechanics. And I've had my own health challenges. I went through a nasty divorce and lost 3 sons in a divorce. I really haven't had anything to do with 18 years, and I actually ended up with pancreatic cancer. Later on, I had a brain tumor, so I've had my own health challenges. So when I talk about, and I've been through some of the nastiest depression you can imagine. So when I talk about, these conditions, I speak from experience. And I had a pretty normal upbringing, and my whole education was in Helena, then Montana State University, which has a real top physics program and engineering program, one of the most highly accredited in the nation. At one time, Montana schools, the University of Montana west of me in Missoula and Montana State University to the southeast of me in Bozeman, Montana, used to give out more Barry Goldwater scholarships than MIT, Harvard, Princeton, all of them. Okay? It was a very, very good school system in the state, so I'm a product of that school system. And that said, I really hate to talk about myself, but I had some folks that helped develop standard IQ test to catch up to me some years ago, wanted to test me and estimated my IQ at well over 200. And, that said, I don't have much of an ego. In fact, I have no ego at all. As far as I'm concerned, I'm no better than any other human on the planet. In fact, I think we're all here to serve one another, and that's why I'm here. There's never been a human being I've met in my life that I didn't learn something from. So I value each and every individual. They're all precious to me. They all have a part in this overall fabric of the human family, and I'm just doing my part. I'm just contributing. I'm an athlete. Did some high school and collegiate wrestling, and got out and decided to, instead of everybody was adopting running as a life sport. I hate to run; bores me to death. I got involved in weightlifting and actually unofficially held the world bench press record for a while in my weight class, and I'm fairly strong for my size. I'm not real big, but I've done a lot of powerlifting, and I was actually Mr. Montana. I won the Mr. Montana title when I was 34 years old. And you can't stay in those sports because everybody from behind was pushing you, and they were getting on drugs, and I just knew it. So my activity level in those sports was very brief because I wasn't going to take the drugs just to be competitive. So I got out of those, but I continue to work out. I work out twice a week at a health club and stay in good shape. I'm going to be 61 here in July, and I'm a lot of people guess that I'm probably in my late 40s or 50, somewhere around there. I have no health problems. I don't have an ache or a pain in my body. I still squat heavy, no knee pain, no back pain. I feel great. I don't know, older, I might be ugly, but I'm in pretty good shape, aren't I?
I'll tell you what, Dan. I mean, if anybody just looked at your forearms, they'd say, man, it's like you tear up a crowbar. He's definitely, folks, he's definitely in great shape. He's a great attitude. He's got great energy. I just love this guy. He's been such an encouragement to me. I just know I wouldn't be here. I don't have no problem with some kudos for Dan Nelson. He's such a great guy, and he spends so many hours every day on the phone talking to people and going to meetings, and hopefully we're going to be announcing some of the meetings coming up here very shortly on the website, Dan, if we could get some scheduling on. I know you're going to be in California this year. You're usually at meetings usually each month. We're looking forward to Denver in August with Peter and Paul and the guys.
Next week, I'll be going out to Minneapolis, going north of there, outside of Buffalo, Minnesota, and put on a 2-day workshop there. And who knows where else I'll be before the end of the year. They're talking about taking me to southwest Montana, down in the Bitterroot, to put on one of the most beautiful areas in the world, by the way, put on a meeting there, and I don't know where I'll be before the end of the year. I just kind of let it unfold. It has a way of doing that. But I go all over and teach, and boy, the people are tremendously receptive. And I'll have medical doctors, I'll have veterinarians, PhD psychiatrists, PhD psychologists, chiropractors, naturopaths, everybody you can imagine sitting there taking notes, and I don't have a medical background. It's like when I was in New Paltz, New York last fall, the lady who's a psychiatrist came up to me. I started teaching Saturday morning. We broke for lunch. She came up to me and said, I don't think I can go back to psychiatry. I said, why? She says, because you've destroyed my whole paradigm. I said, well, it's all an illusion. I said, it's simply energy. And everybody's been taught to think in terms of chemical structures and neurotransmitters and all this stuff. I said, you're going to pretty much, if you're going to make any progress, you're going to have to forget that stuff and start over again, because that's not where the future is.
Well, I know a lot of people are talking about DNA and genome and...
Oh, sure, I know, and genetic engineering. Well, I got to tell you something. Your genetics are simply expressions of what's already going on in your energy field. If the energy field changes, guess what else changes? Your DNA changes. Your chromosomes change. So I don't even think in terms of those physical entities anymore. It's all about energy. We're getting far more done with energy than you can imagine.
The DNA is constantly changing. And I know one of the things that you've just come out with, the overlays and with the biodis system, is dealing with, I forget the name of the word, Dan, right off the top of my head. It's the cap that holds the structure.
Oh, the telomere, yeah.
Yes, telomere cap. And those degrade, and they have to, because the cells die and reproduce, but we're trying to think about how to keep the cells going and keep them running optimally, keeping them from mutating. And I feel this is what the water's doing, and the energy's in the water, and also with the new biodisc system. It's been out for about a year or so, and it just keeps getting better. I get nothing but good reports from people that are doing experiments with this biodisc system working in the morphic etheric energy field of the body.
Right. So
you think we shouldn't be thinking so much into the terms of the actual structure, but the energy field around the DNA, or actually more importantly, it's the mitochondria, it's the cell. It's the cell wall that really tells the internal parts, constituents, like the DNA, inside the cell, what to do, isn't it? And then the environment is enhanced by putting good fluid, good water, in around the cells that it can utilize.
Well, it only stands to reason. The function of the cell is organized by what's in your energy field. Guess what disorganizes it? Problems in the energy field. It's organized and disorganized by the same basic type of energetic, structured energy is what I refer to as.
And you in times past when we've talked, you kind of referred to this as you come to understand that there is a template, a organized, harmonious template, and then on the flip side of that coin, there's a disorganized, chaotic template that seems to be pretty consistent with what we see with markers with some of the parasitic organisms.
Well, it's like, the computer analogy would be this template, this energetic template is like a computer file, and you can corrupt the file. You get a virus, okay? So the virus could come from a negative experience that makes you feel extremely powerful negative emotions. There's the virus added to the file. Now the file is being corrupted. Well, we got to figure out how do we get rid of that. It can be done on a literal computer. It can be done in your energy fields. So this is a energy template, and all we can do is essentially add energies onto that energetic grid, so to speak, that just don't belong there and need to be removed. But while they're there, they distort the information that the cells get. They block the flow of energy, and anytime you block the correct flow and movement of energy and its distribution, you're going to have problems.
With this, the newer updates that, well, maybe not be that new. I know you've been working on this too. You have a commercial device that's larger and a lot more construction and machining and precision work done that people could also utilize to help create a positive energy field in their entire environment.
Oh yeah. I've got something on the floor here now that anybody can purchase through you, and it pumps a kind of energy into your environment that helps replicate heart math. It helps synchronize the rhythms produced by your heart. And you just, with this going in your environment, just a passive device that sits there 24 hours a day, you just feel much calmer and much more in control in your own environment. Funny thing is, I have some flies come into the house. I have no idea why this is, Elder. They can't deal with that energy, and pretty soon they're dead. They're laying on the carpet or in the windowsill, and they just die. They can't handle that energy. I've never seen anything like it before.
Well, that sounds like a very, very powerful energy field that's being put off by that triangular-shaped device.
Well, it is. I have a special dowsing rod here. Remember that one you sold to me that's got the spring?
Yes, the one that was developed based on the German technology or the German spring that was special made for it. Yes,
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, if I have this device set up, I can't use that dowsing rod because it won't stop moving. You cannot stop it from it just wags up and down, wags up and down. I'm serious. But I have to disassemble this thing, and then I can use that dowsing rod.
Well, I imagine it may take a little bit of time right at first for people to acclimate to that energy in the beginning when they get around it.
It's just like you practicing heart math, like in Doc Childers' book,
Right.
And where you do the synchronized breathing and you think about things like love and appreciation. It just does the same thing. It's kind of like an override mechanism. It helps your body's heart rhythms to synchronize without any conscious effort on your part. That's pretty neat stuff.
Like a chi metronome.
Yeah.
Like a
What was
chi
that question
metronome.
again?
Yeah. Like a chi metronome.
Oh.
Yes, right. Yeah. Like a chi metronome. Yep, that's it. Now, I've got technology here that you can all purchase. I mean, like, just a quick experience here. I get a call from a guy back in Indiana, and he's an Amish farmer, and he raises goats, 3 goats for milking. He says people come from all over to buy the goat milk. And he says, I make this goat feed. I put it in a 5-gallon plastic bucket. It's a combination of different grains, wheat and barley and oats and so forth. And he said, every morning I go out and I spread it out in their trough. He says, they're not wild about it. They'll nibble a little bit and then go off and eat grass and come back and nibble a little bit more and go eat some more grass. But he says, the first morning, he says, I took this technology and he says, I put the bucket on top of it for 60 seconds. I spread it in their trough, and he says they devoured it, and they came over, and they were trying to eat my hands off to get in the bucket. He said, I'd never seen that behavior before. He said, well, the next day, he said, I milked them and got more milk from each goat. He said, well, I wanted to tell you that every Saturday my daughter makes goat milk cheese from 5 gallons of goat's milk, and she gets 4 3/4 pounds of cheese. He says, after treating their food and milking them, he says, we're getting 6 pounds of cheese from the same amount of goat's milk, and it tastes better and it has a better texture than it's ever had. And he said, people are calling me from all over and saying, what are you doing to this goat's milk? It's the best tasting goat's milk we've ever drunk, and it lasts longer. It doesn't tend to go bad and get that goaty taste as soon. So, in other words, this technology you can use on your own food, and you can dramatically increase the bioavailable protein content of your food within 30 seconds. And at the same time, you can break down all the allergenic properties of your food. If you're allergic to dairy, you can get rid of the allergenic properties. If you have a gluten intolerance, you can eliminate that. You can basically turn your food organic in 30 seconds.
Was there something that changed? I remember one comment about soft drinks
Oh, I developed that template to block calories. Okay, so I got the idea to expose a Coca-Cola, classic Coca-Cola. Well, in 30 seconds, the pH went from 1.7 up to 10. It becomes alkaline. It actually becomes good for you. And the calories go from 140 down to 26 in 30 seconds.
Phenomenal.
So there's no reason to ever drink a Diet Pop again, because you can expose a classic Coke or Pepsi or whatever to this technology for 30 seconds, and it becomes alkaline instead of acid. And everybody tells me they can actually the taste and the change in taste is obvious, and they think it tastes better. It improves taste.
I wonder what that did with some good wine or some double malt Scotch whiskey.
It improves all that stuff. Now here's a bizarre thing. This was brought to me by the gentleman that flew me down to Beverly Hills to put on a workshop. He said, "Did you realize that there is no after effect from drinking alcohol after it's been exposed to this technology?" I said, "Yeah, I knew that, but I wasn't going to advertise that."
Say again.
He said there is no after effect from drinking alcohol that's been exposed to this technology.
You mean drunk? There's no feelings of being
nope. And no
hangover.
day after effect.
Well, this could help
hangover.
people. This maybe help people get off of alcohol and maybe smoking and.
That's possible. Maybe treating tobacco on this might make.
Well,
it
we've got
possible.
some people that are definitely in line to want to try that. We've got somebody on right now that has got that.
Nope.
Yeah, Ray, right? Ray, you're a smoker.
Yeah, we need people to try this technology and see what it does. Yeah.
Well, now, regarding the water, Dan, and when you're talking about animals, and this is great. I mean, we want to deal with the whole issue. We're looking at our family and our personal health. A lot of people have concerns, and everyone on this talkcast tonight has concerns for our animal friends and plant friends. Is there specific water?
No, the same water.
That you use for animals? It's separate
Nope.
from what we drink, or?
Same water. I have 2 cats here. They're both 23 years old apiece, and you'd never think they were more than 10. They drink my water. They're incredible health, and they drink the same water. They have one of these water. Well, it looks like your standard water cooler where you put the jug upside down,
right,
and then it feeds water into a little bowl below it. And I just see the energy from concentrate into that thing full of water, and then just leave it there. They drink the water, and they're both 23 years of age, and people can't believe it.
23-year-old cats.
They're active. In fact, they're outside running around now and hunting and so forth. And yep.
Mm-hmm.
Dan.
Yep.
This is Paul in Colorado.
Hi, Paul.
Got a question. Back to the technology you were talking about that I called the Chi metronome, and that you were talking about with the goats. What is actually? Are you calling it?
Well, I just refer to it as my solid-state technology, but it uses 3 basic components. 2 of those components are needed to do any of this stuff I'm describing, and then the 3rd component is the variable, and it determines the specificity of what you want to do. And it's all based on geometry. It's how geometry modifies energy.
Is it Merkaba type stuff?
Pardon?
Is it based on the Merkaba geometries?
Nope, it's not. No.
Okay, all right.
These geometries, I have everybody say, "Oh, it's sacred geometry." No, it's not. I said it's functional geometry. Geometry is not necessarily functional. You may think it's sacred, but it's not necessarily functional. This geometry actually is a workhorse. It does something. I've calculated it to do something. And this is based on what we call non-commutative mathematics or non-commutative geometry. There's a man in France, Alain Connet. They call him the geometer of physics. He's using non-commutative geometry, and everything they've ever discovered about quantum mechanics, subatomic particle physics is coming out of his geometry. And mathematicians are flocking from all over the world to see what this man has done. So I'm the first and only man in the world to apply non-commutative geometry to biology, and with a high degree of success. We're doing some amazing things, and a lot of those things I wouldn't discuss on the phone.
Are you making this product available?
It's available right now. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it on your website there, Elder?
Yes, I just put a link up for you at the top.
Biodisc.
Rangeguide.net, biodisc.htm. You can go and read a whole lot there.
Okay.
And see some of the technology. And I don't have a picture yet of the commercial unit, but in time we'll have that up.
Question for Dan again on the commercial unit. What's the range of it? Does it have a range like an RF range or whatever?
It produces a huge energy field. The energy is detectable. The radius is well over 200 feet. Goes several hundred feet above the object, and you can put a huge amount of plant matter on top of it, tons of it, and it'll change it all in 30 seconds. In fact, when I first assembled this object, within 10 minutes, everybody in the house was so dizzy I had to disassemble it. That's how much energy it produces. I have one in the house. I have to keep it standing on its side. When I laid it down, there were 6 people in the house that had come from out of town. Pretty soon one woman said, "Oh, no, it's hit me right in the head." She said, you gotta move that thing. She said, or I've got to leave the house. And,
so does this tap the energy of the chaotic zero point? Kind of like an amplifier?
This energy has more to do with changing the electron spin orientation than anything.
Okay.
Toxic properties of foods are basically determined by electron spin configuration or orientation, and this
low vibes, bad vibes.
Yeah, this object has the ability is very, very powerful at changing that very quickly. You can come into my house and be wearing your glasses, and I'll demonstrate that your glasses are actually bad for you. They're blocking energy. I put them on this object for 30 seconds, and it changes the electron spin orientation. In the glasses, the frames are no longer an allergen. They're not blocking energy.
Especially the eyeglasses that people are beginning to wear again, that the plastic type eyeglasses that have formaldehyde in them.
Yep, plastics, metals. You can do that to the rings you wear on your finger. Women can do it to all their jewelry, and to your watch, to your cell phone, to your belt buckle. If you wear a baseball cap, if there's a plastic band in the back, you want to put that plastic band over this and change it. Otherwise, it'll block energy. You can expose all your foods, all the products you use on your body. I've got people going throughout their house changing everything, and they're telling me the house feels completely different. I'm putting it under the furniture and everything.
This might work really well for increasing gardening or aquaculture or for fish.
Yep.
Affect the water, your pond, your lake.
Sounds like some of the things that Slim Sperling fools around with.
Yeah, but I think this works a lot better than Slim stuff.
It's possible. I'm sure that he's pretty much a hit and miss kind of guy, but he makes a lot of claims about his harmonizer devices. So.
I've had one. I checked it. I couldn't find where it did anything.
Well, test equipment is a key factor. If you can measure something and compare it to other things, then you've got some way of making a comparison. Otherwise, claims are really hollow if there's no way to measure anything.
Yeah, that's right. Claims are just that, claims. You've got to get results, yeah. Anyway, Elder, we're coming up on 3 hours here.
Yes, we certainly are. If you would like to make any closing comments, Dan, and then I'll follow up after you. I appreciate everyone being
I just want to say that going back to the first time I met you, that Elder's been a constant in my life, a true friend, and very open-minded, but not a gullible individual. He very, very carefully researches everything, very interested in helping people, and he's a young man that knows he has to survive, and yet I've never found him to be have any greed in him or terribly interested in becoming a wealthy man. He definitely is more concerned about giving people a break, helping people as much as he can, and I truly appreciate the opportunity to be on this call tonight. And I had Elder in my house once. We did an interview, and he posted that on the internet, and I've had more people telling me, I read that interview with Elder Hale. Yeah.
Thank you, Dan. I really appreciate those very kind words, and I feel the same about you. And we've got some really great people here on the call tonight. I appreciate you being on this first premiere broadcast of Range Guide Radio with our guest tonight, Dan Nelson. If you need to find out any more about the broadcast, you can tune in later to talk to the TalkShoe website, or you can go to rangeguide.net, and when you go to after you enter into the main web page there, you will see a blue a vertical bar. It says TalkShoe on it, and you will be able to hear this broadcast again. About 30 minutes to an hour, these go up onto the badges. They call these badges. And so we encourage you to find out more about TalkShoe. You might find that it will serve you to get the word out, to give us a forum, to give us a freedom to speak, because as it is, people are trying to take our freedom of speech away. They're trying to take our health away from us, take it out of our hands and control that. And this is what we're about. We're about talking about these things. Excuse me. And talking about these things while we have an opportunity to have it. And we don't know how much longer that the Internet's going to be up or how things are going to go in America, but we're going to stay on a positive note, and that's what it's about here at Range Guide Radio. It's not about surviving, it's about thriving. And our motto is love rules. We believe that if you look through the lens of love at everything, through that lens, then the next steps that you're going to take are going to be good steps, and it's a lot less likely that you're going to be lost on your path in life. So we appreciate everyone being on. If you have any more questions, you can always email me, elder7@rangeguide.net, or go to rangeguide.net, or call 706-937-7379. Once again, thank you everyone for being on the broadcast tonight, and we look forward to you being with us again. Thursday night, we have Professor Brian Peskin, the author of The Hidden Truth of Cancer. Is going to be discussing a whole lot of things about what we can do and some things we can avoid to help us with that regard. Be sure to stay tuned for upcoming episodes of Range Guide Radio. Thank you for joining us, and good night.